All right, so we should be live. What's happening, everyone? Um, Good to be here with you, Dan.
Yeah,
Uh,
thanks for having me.
I think tonight should be a fun, kind of interesting topic that we'll start with, and then obviously, like usual, we'll sort of open it up once we talk a little bit for kind of questions or comments and all that good stuff. So why don't you start us off? And I saw someone like also asking like, what does our title even mean? Like, what are we talking about? So
Yep.
also just like framing the conversation about like what it is we're getting at here.
Yeah, the whole bags is a bit of a slang term that's been popularized. I don't know if it's popular anywhere else, but it's a popular terminology in our Discord.
Yeah.
Shout out to the spicy boys in our Discord who use that term. But bags, generally speaking, a lot of people are probably fairly familiar with the term bag holder. You don't want to be the one left holding the bag, things of that nature. So bags are bad. Bags are what you don't want to be left holding. Slabs being bags, basically meaning the majority of slabs, the majority of graded cards are a fruitless endeavor. Not really a fruitless endeavor, but like something that will be a net loss of money for most people interacting with them. Slabs are bags. That's the core premise.
Oh, Dan, I think I lost you for a second. I think my internet just went in and out quickly.
Okay,
Just can you give a quick, just a really short summary? That was on my end, I think.
okay.
So
Mine's
I
been a little
saying
rocky too.
bags are bad. That's what where
Okay.
I left it.
So yeah, bags are bad. You don't want to end up being the bag holder. So
Yeah.
the title of the show is something like Slabs are bags. Essentially, my take, and I've been meaning to do a video on this for some time. It was kind of being talked about in our Discord. Jake asked me if I wanted to go live and have a chat about it. So my main premise is basically the vast majority of slabs, plastic encapsulated cards, CGC, PSA, BGS, especially XYZ, all these other basement card grading companies. Generally, they're not an added value thing in 99% of instances. 99% might be a little extreme. I think I started out with 95% before, but yeah, 95%, I guess I feel more comfortable with. PSA's grading 10 million cards a year. Let's see if I'm capable of the quick math. 10 million cards a year. That would mean 9.5 million of those cards they're grading per year are bags. And maybe that's unreasonable. Maybe that's too much. In Pokemon, I feel like that's probably on par. In broader sports and other things, maybe it's not. So I don't really know on overall, but I guess in Pokemon, 95% of slabs are bags.
Okay, so are you making the claim that you think that 95% of slabs that people are buying right now or could buy, or 95% of the slabs that are going to be graded are going to be worth less than people paid for them? And is that the people who are grading the slabs, or the people who are buying the slabs, or just everyone?
I guess it was a broader conversation that got down to this claim, I think. And the first, and I need to get chat pulled up. Sorry, I need to get chat pulled up on my phone. But 95% of people interacting with the hobby, and I don't want this to come across as pompous or arrogant or anything like that. A lot of people who interact with the hobby by design will be a net. They're going to put money in, they're never going to get money out. So by design, a lot of people are true collectors, right? A lot of people go to Walmart, go to their LGS, they buy cards, they consume them, open them, do like they're never going to sell them. They're a net. Their net Pokemon interaction will be like a financial input, and they'll never take any out
Of
by
course.
design.
Yeah.
But I make the claim that, and I can make up a random number, but a vast majority of people interacting with the hobby in a way trying to take money out will follow their path unintentionally, they will be a net negative into the hobby. They'll lose money investing in Pokemon. They'll lose money. And part of the reason companies like this, billions of dollars per year, they are profiting in this industry, taking money out of the hobby. That money's coming in somewhere, right? So all the money that PSA is taking out, all the money that eBay is taking out, Heritage, Golden, that's coming at the expense of somebody. And to some extent, I mean, you can make the claim it's one fixed pie, and or you can grow the pie, that whole thing. But a lot of that money that's coming out, a lot of it's like the gold rush analogy, right? 1%, maybe 5% of the people that went to seek gold during the gold rush made money. 95% of them lost money, but everyone selling the pickaxes and the shovels made money. So that's a little bit of an analogy for, like, I guess what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with that. I think though that so I mean, it was a point that I made on this channel. Like, I feel like every video for many months about slabs, about eBay was that the people, the companies that were making there were companies that were making definite money. And this is even true with your online pack breakers and your stream and streamers and content creators. Like, there are people who are making definite money off of entertaining you, off of auctioning off your cards, off of slabbing your cards, whatever. And the business of kind of making this hobby go. And then there were people who made money by buying cards at a lower price and then selling those cards at a higher price. But obviously there's a different sort of gamble in that. And a very different you're thinking about this very differently than these companies that just take a flat 10% fee, 5% fee, or whatever of sort of whether they're grading your card for you or they're selling your card for you, all those types of things. Now, when you throw out a number like 95%, I mean, first of all, what I think is that the majority of people are not trying to make money. And the majority of there, maybe even the majority, I'm not sure. I think it would depend on like the age and the types of things they're buying. Maybe don't even care that much about the money. I think there are a lot of people who they care. They're not trying to necessarily make money, but they don't want to like overspend, nor do they want to see their cards like
They
get destroyed in value, which is
they
very
want to optimize,
yeah, yeah.
get as much
And
as
they
they
like
can for their money. Yeah.
yeah, and they want to feel like if I spend a lot of money, like the cards are going to hold up in value or even potentially go up or these types of things. Very different than the people who are looking to like retire on this or quit their jobs to do it, et cetera, et cetera. I think the vast majority of people, the vast majority of people fit into either of those categories. I mean, how many people do I think are like, I'm here solely to make money. That's my main focus. I've chosen Pokemon because I think I understand it the best. And this is where I'm going to like make most of my money. Now, of those people, do you think that those people, like, are you saying 95% of the people who are focused on money aren't going to make money? Like, what do you on these slabs, or what are you thinking?
And that's where, like, this was I forget what even was the genesis of this thought, but like part of me, it was like the whole YouTube thing. I wanted to have a title that grabbed people, and I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to start with something like 95% of slabs or bags or something along those lines. But um so it's not a fully developed thought, I guess, and we're going live and chatting about it. But
Yeah.
as you said, it is impossible to quantify what percent of people are in this hobby by design to just be a collector, consumer, will never sell anything. I would assume that it's a majority. And
What do you mean by design? You mean the Pokemon company's design? What do you mean?
by their own design. Like, I know a lot of people who just they go to the store and they buy a booster pack once a week, however often. Like, when I was younger, by design, I was a consumer only. I was never looking to sell anything on eBay. I was begging my parents to buy all the packs that I could. I looked at the value guides. I looked at, like, I had some idea of what some of it was worth in some regard, but I was solely a consumer back in 1999, never with a thought to sell anything, just with a thought to try to collect all I could. So I think a majority, over 50% of people buying any kind of Pokemon cards. And that's a guess. That's a complete guess, but I know it's a vast, vast minority of people who are going to hop into a YouTube live on a Pokenomics channel targeted towards the economics behind Pokemon on a Friday night. Like we are definitely in a fraction of people who consider and think about the finances of Pokemon this in depth. I mean that's an objective fact, but it's all estimates as to what percent of people. But 95% is kind of a made up number, like most statistics. I guess another thing that I can kind of throw out that would sound a bit incendiary, that would sound a bit off the wall, maybe they print 4 billion cards per year. 99.9% of cards, if not more, that they print are never worth more than the day that they're sold at retail. I mean, retail on a pack is $3.99. There's 10 cards in a pack. That's 40 cents a card. 99.9% of cards ever printed of the 4 billion cards per year are not worth 40 cents and never will be. I mean, a lot of cards are just 1 cent, 2 cent, 3 cent bulk. And that's just a basic fact. But yeah, getting into it further, the whole 10 million cards a year that are graded. My start on YouTube, like I've had my own channel for 14 months now. But you remember my first interaction on YouTube was with John, Pokemon Radar, on his channel. And that was like peak boom, peak insanity. And then a month or two later, I went on your channel in the fall of 2020. And we were talking about 1K EVs and Pikachus and 30K base set boxes. And a lot of those people buying those things were buying them with intent to profit, as crazy as it sounds. And because I mean, I sold to some of them and I talked to some of them. And yeah, I just think largely people after money, and maybe it's 51%, a slight majority, but most people thinking that these things are great investments. And that's modern, that's vintage, that's anything.
Mm-hmm.
Most of these people will just spend a lot of money buying the things, paying eBay, paying Heritage, paying Golden, paying CGC, paying PSA, paying dealers, and then not getting the financial gain out of it that they're seeking. That's my core claim. It's probably really scattered, really rambly, but that's hopefully I kind of had some kind of a coherent basis for the argument I'm trying to make.
So Pikachu says that making money doesn't just mean life changing or retiring, etc. The majority are trying to make something. Unfortunately, most of them may fail because of surface level effort or other reasons. Yeah.
Yeah, and I saw somebody mention in the chat like the baseline. If you buy a card, whatever the card is,
Mm-hmm.
you need a card to go up 25% for you to break even. Fees will eat you alive in this kind of hobby. In the stock market, S&P 500 or any, like the broad stock market, in stock trading in general, it's some, I don't, again, made up statistics, made up numbers. A vast majority, I won't do firm numbers, I'll just say a vast majority of active fund managers, of professional fund managers, lose to the S&P 500, lose to these lazy indexes because of fees. And fees in that space are minuscule. Fees in that space are fractions, like basis points, fractions of a percent. And in our industry, fees are 10 to 20%, maybe only 5% if you're selling direct through PayPal and then shipping. But yeah, so the you need a 20% gain just to realize a break even.
Yeah, no. I think that it's an interesting thought experiment, and it's one that I have a lot of, just sort of the psychology of the moment and how I compare the psychology of this moment to the psychology of what I viewed as sort of like the height of the mania. I still think and agree with you that even with prices having fallen, considerably from the highs on a lot of things, there's still a lot of like investment sentiment. And What I mean by that is a lot of people who I think are buying these items mainly or in large part because they think that they're getting a really good deal and that they're going to like make a considerable amount of money and then it's going to go up a lot, right? And it's dangerous. It's dangerous. That psychology is dangerous because it can make you spend outside of your means. It can make you buy things that you don't really like or enjoy that much. And you're buying things not based on necessarily like you valuing the card and hoping that it stays around the same level or goes slightly or goes just a little bit down, but you're buying an item with the expectation that it's going to go up quite a bit. And that's really the main reason that you're buying that item. And if a lot of people are buying items right now, because, with that sort of mindset, it works as things are laddering up because it reinforces that sort of mindset. But as things kind of come down, that bubble sort of bursts, that mindset sort of bursts, and then people start um, really collecting again more, which to me sets a sort of stabilizing sort of a low point price where people are and now I'm having a lot more conversations with people that are, Jake, I'm comfortable losing money because I really want this item, but I just don't want to lose like a ton of money. Like that to me is a much more healthy market. Like when that's the thinking of the vast majority of people buying stuff. Do you think that we're in that space with with a lot of slabs, or do you think like 95% of people right now, or 95% of slabs or things that are being bought are bought with the same sort of like fervor? Like what are you thinking about stuff like that?
I've been back in the hobby for 8 years,
Mhm.
and anyone who's known me several years back on E4, I have long been vocally uh critic. I guess I've been a critic of grading companies,
Yes.
and I remain one. I perpetually think the market way overvalues the plastic, the slab, the third party opinion. I think everything about it. I just think it is. I mean, and I say this as somebody who has removed a lot of money from the hobby. For my first 6 years in the hobby, from 2014 to 2020, I didn't remove any money from the hobby. I just bought more and more and more with all my gains. And then I've turned this into a full-time job, largely off selling slabs of cards that I just bought raw, graded, and sold for obscene premiums over the raw card. And to me, it like unreasonable premiums. It's not as bad today as it was in 2020, naturally, because prices have come down a ton. But the 10 premium has always stood out as the most absurd just because it's the highest number. And oftentimes 10s and 9s look pretty similar. But it's just yeah, like PSA is functionally removing billions of dollars per year from the hobby. And then people like me who are utilizing PSA services, paying PSA the billions of dollars, are also removing billions of dollars a year. And it's not that hard to do when you're grading cards like that because, again, the market just vastly overvalues them. Maybe I'm wrong. It would be greatly to my financial benefit that I'm wrong because I have a ton of inventory and I can continue to grade more cards into the future. I just think it's crazy how much people pay for graded cards. The worst offenders are the cards that are, we know what the worst offenders are. We've talked about them. The base unlimited Charizard, and that's a base unlimited holo because there's hundreds of thousands or millions of them. The base unlimited non-holos are the worst. The Fossil and Jungle first edition non-holos, the ultra modern promos that are still managing to sell for $50 or more when there's 30,000 of them. Just things like that are the majority of what's graded. And a lot of the people here, again, we are not a representative sample of the average Pokemon consumer. People chatting at 11 p.m. on a Friday night on YouTube are not like a representative sample. So disproportionately people consuming this content right now are less likely to be the bag holders, I would think. But yeah, a vast majority of people buying slabs are going to be left holding the bags.
But I guess then it gets back to that question, Dan, right? Of like, are the people who are holding these bags or the way you're talking about it, like, is it really a bag if you bought this as a collector and you're completely fine with it going down? And if most of the people, like, if a lot of the people who are the most market savvy are actually going to do okay, and I'm not telling you which way to believe or not. I want to know your actual opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you think that people who are poring over data are extremely engaged in the market, are extremely engaged in the price history, are going to lose a lot of money on slabs, are going to make these, like, do you think there's no opportunity? And I know that obviously you don't know the answer, but like, just your honest opinion. And for everyone out there, like, we can't predict the future. So this is just Dan sort of sharing his, opinions and experience, and then I'll, offer some of mine. But and to be fair, just as Dan kind of said, like, Dan has also been pretty bearish and negative, like when prices were a lot lower. So there is also like, sometimes this isn't necessarily bias, but it's there are people who just like don't really like collecting slabs that much, or don't understand the chase or the excitement of getting tens. Let's put it that way. Like Rafi's the exact same way, but that doesn't mean that it's actually genuine and not just about making money for certain people. Now, I think the danger of tens, is it just about investing and making money, or is it actually more enjoyable to have those tens in your collection, to have that rarity? That's a very personal question for collectors out there. And I've had that conversation with a lot of people, but yeah, before going there, what do you think about sort of my first, question there, Dan?
Yeah. So the first, I'm trying to think. I had where I was going to go with it, and then I lost it.
Yeah, sorry,
Um,
I rambled on there for a little, as I do.
um, so yeah, some amount of people are clearly not, they're consuming this as a collector. They don't care about the long-term value, all that. Again, those people, if you have a fixed budget and you're just putting in that amount of money with no intent to ever get it out, maybe you have a thought like, when I go out to dinner, I spend $50 on a dinner and then it's gone forever. When I buy a $50 Pokemon card, it might not be worth $50 in a few years, but it will at least be worth something.
Mm.
That's like a fairly common sentiment, I think, in the hobby. It's nice when you can buy. I thought I had a booster box handy. It's nice when you can buy. Oh yeah, I do. It's nice when you can buy even $180. You can buy a $180 booster box. There's some amount of a chance you get a $700 Moonbreon if you grade it with PSA and this and that. Whereas if you go spend $180 going to the Rangers game and then you watch your team lose, like I just happened to watch my team lose, thankfully, from the comfort of my own couch, and I didn't spend money to go there, but I would have nothing except for the experience, nothing left of any value. Whereas if you do the Pokemon thing, you have something of value. So again, like those amount of people that are doing it consciously, knowing that they're just collecting, it's a hobby, they're spending money on their hobby, and that's fine.
Mhm.
Those people are kind of aside. But even people with intent to make money, I think a majority of them, not the 95% number. Again, the 95% number was kind of pulled from nowhere. It was kind of made up. But I think I think a majority of people intending to make money, a lot of them just have no exit plan. They've never sold. They don't know how to sell. They don't understand the 20% fees that it costs to sell.
Mhm.
And man, I had somewhere else I was going to go with that and I forgot. I lost it.
Should I give you a second?
No, no, go ahead.
Maybe it'll come back to you. So yes, I mean, I definitely agree. I mean, these are things that we've talked about on the channel since the beginning together. I mean, we had our first video years ago, like a year and a half ago or what, kind of trying to really be kind of real, trying to be very realistic with people, right? About what it takes to sell, the lack of liquidity, the the experience it can take, and then the fees you have to pay, and sort of what type of returns you need, in order to actually make money, and then how much is that money actually, and then how much money are you putting at risk to try and make that money, right? These are all parts of that equation, that are not covered on any hype channel that people are watching out there that are telling them to buy these things. And I do think that most people watching those channels are really collectors at heart that probably can afford to lose what they're putting in. But there's going to be some percentage of people that aren't, and they might be collectors at heart, but they're really spending way outside their means, and they're putting themselves in a bad situation because they are getting caught up in this dream of, being very rich or making a lot of money, and they're seeing other people do it, and they want to do it too. So now, going back to our conversation tonight, right, which is about slabs, and we really haven't dug deep into like which slabs we're talking about, or are all slabs created equal, or all those types of things which we can talk about. But I really like. I still think that. Okay, let me put it this way: Do you think that it's possible that you are being far too bearish in general, like on the whole market? And like, how probable do you think it is that your whole outlook on we look back in 10 years from now, and all of these things are far more expensive, much more established. There's way, way more graded. There's way, way more collectors. You have much bigger events happening, and it's a much more built out scene. Like, what percentage do you think that could possibly happen? And if you think it's very, very small, why do you feel so confident in that? Where does the bearishness come from, and then where does the bullishness come from? Just to kind of get both parts of this.
The scenario you just laid out is definitely a possible one. I would have told you when we had our conversation, I forget exactly when it was, but I remember seeing PSA 10. I sold these 8 years ago for $30, $40. I've probably graded 100 of these. I don't know how many are in the pop report, but I've graded a ton of them over the years. And I was way too bearish on that card because I got kind of used to selling it for 30, 40, 50, and then it went to 100, 200, 500, 800, near 1,000 at the peak. It's still like a 200 something dollar card, I think, which I think is still way too much money. But I would have told you at $150, that's way too much money. It shouldn't be worth that. It proceeded to 6x from there, and then it went down 70%, and it's still up. It's still up from where I would have said it's a terrible buy. It's way too expensive. So I very well may be too bearish. If I am, I have a bright future. And maybe partially my bearishness on this type of stuff might be almost a defense mechanism of some sorts, because I'm a pretty frugal person in general, except when it comes to Pokemon. I'm a pretty fiscally responsible person, I guess. So now that my income is tied to Pokemon, now that a large portion of my net worth through my inventory, through my collection, is tied to Pokemon as well. So maybe my bearishness is just my mind like trying to compensate for my almost discomfort with how much of my net worth is tied up into this, pushing me to like get to the proper allocation in my mind where I think I should be in traditional investments. And I'm at, like, for my age, I'm at a very comfortable spot as far as no debt and what I have in 401ks and IRAs and traditional things. But still, if you look at my whole picture, if you look at that percentage that's inventory, it's a lot. And that's after a lot of it has fallen 75% or 50%. So yes, some amount of my long-term bearishness could be, but also like just the objective trying to analyze the market. 10 million cards a year. PSA has been grading cards for 30 years, and they've only graded, I forget exactly what the number is now, maybe 35 million slabs are out there from PSA over the past 30 years. 10 more years of this, 100 million more slabs entering the market, that's a lot. And again, the 1%, the trophy cards, the PSA 10 WotC hollows, the good stuff, the things that aren't actively out there ready to be put in slabs. Those things are not what I'm after. Those are not bags. The really good stuff. And at the end of the day, if you're a collector and you want to put this unknown in a $10 slab from CGC or $13.50, whatever it is now, if you want to just put something in a slab and consume that and spend that money and consider it gone, whatever, that's fine. I don't mean to say some cards are bad cards, not worth grading, not like bags. That's not to take away from any collector who has a slab that they enjoy. And I mean, I'm all about that at the end of the day. But packs are bags too. Buying a $4 pack at retail in general, generally speaking, those are negative EV. Those are gambles that are going to lose you money over the long term. The more you open, the more you lose. That's just the nature of packs.
Yeah, I mean, I think like I try to invest a lot on psychology. And I don't think that anyone has good numbers to predict what's going to happen next. I very much believe that. And I think that it's very hard to gauge how much of this was caused by influencers who aren't going to continue to keep that fever. And if those influencers leave, and a lot of the money, like what you could see happen in a bearish perspective is that as money starts to trickle away from the hobby, if the hobby continues to slow down, you'll see businesses start to fold or get smaller. When those businesses start to get smaller, they have much less incentive to pump money into advertising to get other people interested, to get other people engaged. When you lose your local LGSs, when you lose your collecticons, when you lose your, content creators or YouTube channels, you you you're in your PokeRevs and your leaner, you lose a huge amount of like free advertising, basically, of, and people who are shareholders in sort of the success of the hobby from a financial perspective. And so you can see that sort of trickle out and that sort of be negative. I think that at what point, like, do you just think it's downhill forever? Do you think there's going to be a point where it stabilizes or something, and we're just not there yet? Do you think it's going to be? And I find it very interesting. People telling me that someone says like, I can't believe how bullish I am. I haven't really shared my opinion, so I'm not sure where you're getting that from. But I mean, I guess my opinion, and to really piggyback off of this and to kind of share where I have been, is that I'm really in the middle right now. I think there's a lot of negativity that I'm surrounded with. And I think that there's a lot of fear and negative emotion. And I do think that part of your answer, it's part of why I asked, is a fear-based negative emotion of like, you're preparing yourself for losses, and you're preparing yourself, and people are preparing themselves for losses. When that is happening and they're still not liquidating and selling a lot, that actually shows that you're fairly near a bottom for those individuals.
Well, and before I lose my thought this time, let me jump in. So I'm bearish, I guess you would say, on 99% of slabs, plastic, into the long term. But I am bullish on Pokemon. Pokemon will make a lot of money. I'm bullish on eBay. I'm bullish on Heritage. I'm bullish on dealers like myself. I think consumers will continue to consume. The brand is what everyone says. It's the highest grossing media franchise of all time. I think Pokemon can continue 20, 25, 30 years into the future, perpetually pumping out new games, new cards, people grading them, people investing in them. Just because the end consumer is losing money or not making money doesn't mean everything has failed. Like so many industries, actually the majority of industries are just consumers spending, giving their money to the companies and not getting anything out of it. I buy a Coca-Cola, I drink it, it goes away. I spent money. You go out to the movies, you go out to dinner, you go to a hockey game, you buy a PC and build it. Generally speaking, like most of your spending is just consumption that you get an experience, you get an item that ultimately becomes worthless. And I guess in some regards, what I'm saying is maybe your Pokemon card is more analogous to your TV, is more analogous to your PC, is more analogous to your shirt that you wear. You spend $20 on a shirt, you wear it for a few years, it goes in the garbage. It's a consumable. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not that I'm bearish on Pokemon. I'm just bearish on maybe everything always being so valuable all the time. Like right now, we're in a space where 90 sets have been released over a 25-year period. Everyone is worth more, the sealed product, than it was when it was created. But of the what is PSA graded? 3.x million Pokemon cards. I guess what I'm saying is the majority of those graded Pokemon cards are not going to be worth what they were worth when they were initially transacted. Does that make sense?
I personally think that most people's opinions right now are pretty emotional, one way or the other. I'll just be completely honest. I think people who are very bearish are being pretty emotional. I think people who are very bullish are being pretty emotional. I think it's an emotional time. I mean, I think it's been an emotional couple of years for people.
And
You know?
just
And,
quickly
I
on
have a lot
that,
of emotions too, both
just,
bearish and bullish at times. So it's
just
I'm
quickly
not
on that, the
yeah,
8 years I've been in the hobby,
yeah.
that's been a static feeling of mine. This is not a new feeling that's been generated because we've fallen
What is
80%.
what has not been a new feeling that what? What do you mean?
My long-term bearishness on the value of these things. Like
So
this isn't a new feeling that's come because prices have fallen a
that
bunch.
feels a little bit it's interesting, right? Because like there are cards right now that like you won't sell
Which ones?
because you think it's too low or you think they're too rare. And this is another discussion.
Everything's for sale.
Well, I've made some offers and you won't sell. I've made I've made market offers on things. Um, so I think that it's like I think that if you really believed that Pokemon was on a I mean, they're two different conversations. One is like all these modern slabs and modern singles, like literally every single one of them, and then also 95% of vintage is a bag. And the only thing that's not a bag are cards that are probably like already $500 or something each, or $300 each at least, and are vintage WotC like PSA 9 first edition base or better, or something like that in your mind. Like, is that what you're saying? Is that those are the only slabs that aren't bags, or is everything a bag from your perspective? Everything going to go down, or
95 to 99% of slabs are bags, I guess. So 3 million Pokemon cards graded by PSA, 1% of a million is 10,000. So there's 30 to 50,000 slabs that I see being worth more in 20 years. I think the short to mid term, I'm confident that this will all go on. I'm looking more like, and I had a video on it, the whole investing video. I take money out of Pokemon and I put it into companies that I pay every day, every week, every month. The dividend aristocrats, everyone consumes certain amount of products and things. I don't want to get into the whole Pokemon versus S&P 500 thing, but yeah, like mine's more like a 20 year horizon. I'm investing in things for the long term that I'm comfortable will be there if America and the world just continues to go on as we do. 20, 25, 30 years from now, America can continue. The world can continue without Pokemon, and it very well might. A large majority of the S&P 500 companies will be around and have to be around if we're going to continue 10, 25, 30 years from now plus?
Yeah, I mean, I think with pop culture collectibles, the idea is that so so when we look at something like comics, there were different like ages of comics, right? There was like, golden age, bronze age, silver age, all these different eras, right? Some eras being extremely valuable, some eras having some value and some investment potential or some collectible potential that managed to continue to go up, and then some eras that were so overprinted that they still don't have any value now, even though the original stuff is selling for many, many millions, right? Um, I don't think we have something exactly comparable to how big Pokemon is, which is interesting to me. Like, this could end up being one of the biggest collectibles ever, Pokemon cards, and one of the most successful collectibles ever, given the size, the the connection, and the potential long-term money and interest. But I do very much think that it could come in waves. I also think that really people could move digitally, and I don't think it's just like NFTs, but I just think like in general, people may just not be that interested in collecting like physical things. Maybe they collect online things, and that does not need to be NFTs. That can be, there's nothing. It doesn't need to be on the blockchain, to be collectible. But there are a number of scenarios I think could happen. I This is why I feel very sort of in the middle. Is like I don't I don't see anything compelling one way or another to tell me this hobby is going to fold and sort of go downhill, and that all of these like right now I'm buying, you know I bought a decent amount of rainbow rares. Let's use rainbow rares from Sun and Moon, right? Are these bags? It's a good question. And when I'm buying these, like, I'm buying them, right, $5, $4. The booster boxes are 300. These are the hit cards that you get one out of every two boxes. You know what I mean? Like, it's I'm extremely cautious at prices that I buy things. I like to get, in super, super under, right? The complete opposite of like opening a $300 booster box to try to pull one of these, 5, 10, $15 cards.
And
But is that a bag because those generations, there's just going to be nothing of value from that? Or are we going to look back in 10 years and those are going to be, $200, cards potentially, or 15 years? And the answer will be, in my opinion, the size of the demand shift. I think it's so much more unlikely for that to happen now than it was before. And I really want that to settle in. This is where Dan and I would probably agree 100%, is that like there's so many more people now investing in it and keeping it and having this concept and idea. I was one of the only people in the whole world. I was probably one of like 5 to 10 people maybe who bought level X's in the entire world. Do you know how many people think rainbow rares are probably a decent investment and are buying some of that up? Right. And so you need to have a huger growth, even, or a huger change in that demand potentially, to experience that sort of thing. Plus they're in better condition. Plus, like, there's all these reasons why you're unlikely to see the same type of growth again. But you can look at comics and you can say you don't need golden age returns in the silver age or the bronze age, and you can still, like, they can still go up and not be what I would call like bags. It also depends what you mean by a bag. I am 100%, first and foremost a collector, right? And for anyone who's like fairly new to the channel, or I know we have lots of long conversations, and I really don't talk a lot about myself. The channel's mainly about like making arguments about market stuff, but like I am fundamentally here as a collector. I want to build the biggest possible collection I can. And why I bring that up in this context is because, like, I am extremely comfortable with my cards not going up in value or only going slightly up in value, and viewing that as like a success, because I'm not looking for stock market returns, in something like this. And I would not describe any of that as a bag. and this is where we can be with our terms. Like what, like a bag to me is like, I'm coming here to invest. I'm putting a lot of money that I shouldn't, and I'm spending probably on credit, maybe even. And then I'm left, and I was told and I was sold this bill of goods that I was gonna be rich. And now I'm left with this bag of just stuff that I don't want that's worth way less or something like that. Now I might also describe a bag as like if I buy a card I really want at 1,000 and then like 4 years later it's worth 200 or even maybe 500 or 600. That would feel like a bag. So what do you think about my sort of definition of a bag or my thinking? How do you think it applies to this conversation, and your sort of general take or feeling?
Yeah, and let me go back where you mentioned raw cards. Generally speaking, across the board, raw cards are substantially less baggy, if you will, than slabs, because slabs are literally just raw cards encapsulated in 2 cents of plastic and a 2-second opinion by an expert. That's what makes largely it a bag. The fact that 30 seconds of someone looking at the card, putting it in a piece of plastic, someone paying $10 for that service, and now it's getting anywhere between 5 and 5,000 multiple over the raw value of the card. And again, certain times it makes sense. Condition rarity. Money is a weird thing wherein the vast majority of people in the world will work their whole lives to earn money, to live their life, and never really have enough of it. They'll just get by. But then there's the 1%ers, the top 10%, the top 1%, that some amount of people have such a disgusting amount of excess money that they can spend whatever amount they want on anything. Logan Paul can spend more money. I will not make $5.275 million in my life. Maybe I will, but I probably won't. Most people won't. The average American family, the average American household makes like 60 grand a year. That is not $5.275 million over a lifetime. So when people like that, when people with just living in excess with so much money, when they do things in the uber high end, that doesn't matter. That's all whatever. But like people spending money that they don't have, which is way too common of a thing in America, in the world in general. I know a lot of credit card warriors. I know a lot of credit card investors. And them buying raw cards, them buying a rainbow rare for $3, for $5, for $10, that is way less of a bag than them buying that literal exact card encapsulated in plastic with a 10 on it, of which 90% of these raw cards are 10s. For some of them it's 90, for some of them it's 40, some of them are better, right? Some of them, oh, it's a tough set, a lot of whitening, it's a hard set to grade, blah, 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 whatever. Some of them are less baggy than others. But generally speaking, when you're buying a $5 raw card put in plastic with a 10 slapped on it for $100, that's a bag. Especially when you can go to the market and you can buy that raw card yourself. And in 2, 3, 5 years, when PSA is grading cards again for $10, you can just do that yourself. But people aren't patient enough, and people want to get those bags and they want to get them quick.
Yeah, I mean, so I think there's some cards that are more likely to be bagged than others, and I don't think it's necessarily like 95% of things that being are graded. Like again, I think that there are some cards in every era right now that are being graded that I think if Pokemon grows over time and we're in more of like, let's say, a silver age of Pokemon right now or a bronze age, they will do well. Now, do I think, and Dan and I always talk about this, right? Guys, like, and everyone here knows this extremely well, but like you sourcing that card raw yourself, waiting for grading prices to come down and you grading it yourself, a lot of the time is going to be cheaper, but not all the time. Right. So there are cards right now that I'm buying, PSA 9, PSA 10, that it would cost me certainly at $50 way more. But it probably even in the future it could cost me more, particularly as I get back some eights, that it's actually cheaper just to buy the 10. So
Mm.
there there are now way more often than not though. It is going to be your cheapest route is going to be buying, as we always say, large
Greater
quantities.
than 95% of the time, I would wager myself.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the stuff that I buy in Target, I'm buying the cards already graded in auctions these days, right now. Okay. But I also have a grading pile of 15,000 cards, probably or something, insane now to grade. Now, there's only like 10% of that is Pokemon, guys. So I know I don't talk about what else I do. I do a lot of other things other than Pokemon. And it really spread out, into a lot of other things. I'm grading some of
Bob
those.
Saget's.
I'm grading some Bob Saget's.
A $700. Cam and James will agree. A $700 Bob Saget is a bag.
Yeah, that's a bag.
Yeah.
Because I bought a bunch of the boxes for $15 each, and I pulled like 6 Bob Saget's per
And,
box.
and I'm a bag holder on these probably because you got them for 15. I got them for like 30, 35.
You just gotta be quick, man.
Yeah. I'm the Timmy rushing in late when it's already tripled.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm someone who like I'm so obsessive about, in a sense, about like getting the best deal. I love the hunt. I go like I do a lot of study before I buy anything. I look at the total price history. I look at what it's been selling recently. I check to see if the same certs are coming on the market over and over again before I make a big purchase. I do a ton of due diligence. And I do that even a lot of the time with modern stuff that I'm buying or modern slabs that I'm buying. So I think for a lot of people, the way like, and Dan and I had this conversation, like, I mean, there are people who buy slabs from Dan all day at like $50 to $100 that I'm buying at $10 to $15. Like, because of auctions versus people just like binning it from Dan. And it's weird. I'm shocked that people are binning it from you when they can
It's
just
not that
easily
weird though. It's
up.
common. Like
But it has to be people who just want the card, and it has to be mostly from people who are collectors, don't you think? Or you think people are really like investing and they just have so little patience,
it,
so little like experience that they're gonna not quickly check to see if any are on auction or like what the last few have sold on auction. It's hard
and
for
it,
me to believe that because those people, honestly, those people are going to be unsuccessful in any single thing that they do. It
and
financially,
again,
you know.
part of my overarching statement
Yeah.
is capturing a demographic of people that don't care. Like there's a lot of people that
But
log
that's
on to
great. If
eBay.
you're a collector and you don't care about the finance, I mean, it's not great, but it's like it's perfectly fine. But that's not sorry, go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, like I've got a card right here. It's like it's a Charizard that there's a million of. It's probably a $30 PSA 9. If I auction this, it would go for like $15, I think. But I sell it as a buy it now for 30. I'm not calling every single person who buys this from me as a bag holder, but I guess they're almost getting like roped into it, into my overarching statement. Because ideally, you just go and you buy this raw for whatever it's going raw and grade it yourself whenever grading opens. Because this card, like people think that this piece of plastic is magic. People think that like the item inside is inherently changed. It's not. It's literally the same thing with a third party opinion slapped on it. And yeah, it's just the consumer of this card from my store, the consumer of this card from my store. I'm kind of covering them unintentionally in my whole bag holder thing, but by design, they are just consuming. I'm not a bag holder for buying this shirt from my local brewery for 25 bucks and then wearing it for 5 years and it goes to zero and I throw it in the trash. I'm doing that by design as a consumer. A large amount of people interacting with the Pokemon hobby, buying this $180 box, buying this $30 slab, they're just buying it for the experience, the joy, the as a consumer, and they will never sell it. One thing that I want to talk about, I feel like I've talked about it in a live with you at some point, but like the attrition is higher than zero. The attrition is nowhere near what it was in 99, but there is attrition of some amount of this modern stuff. most of it, the whole like everything is graded, everything goes into sleeves, card savers, and goes right to PSA. Not everything does. Some amount of stuff, and then even what does go to PSA, some amount of multi-$100 slabs from today are consumed. They will never be sold again once they get to their end consumer. They will end up in a landfill in 20 years, never seeing the market again. People can't like understand that. People can't conceptualize that, but that's a thing. Some amount of that stuff is just going to be gone. Kind of an unrelated, different rant, but I guess that's where I went with it.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, like, so Pikachu, I put a comment up here, saying, that like he worries about the volume of optimism right now. It's
I've been
interesting
following the
because
chat a little bit, but
it's interesting because like I don't feel like there's so much optimism these days from what I would call like, yes, you definitely have channels that are always talking positively, and maybe they're just talking positively about a small segment of the market. They're always going to say that, but I think a lot of the channels that I see or I follow have more of a down tone. I've seen big channels, Rudy is like the consummate, like everything will always be like, it'll be fine and buy. And on the downwards, it's buy slowly, you know. But I feel like lots of people are very worried. And, I see a lot of comments of like a lot more comments than I used to see, about, I mean, there's a lot of people just saying a bunch of like things that aren't true. Like the market's fallen another 30-40% in the last like a month or something. Like I've seen people, like there's a lot of just people just saying things that are not true because I'm watching the market every single day. But that shows me the negativity. I don't know if they're like trying to put out negativity or more fear, but I feel like that we're as negative now as we've been since Logan Paul entered the hobby overall. And that you have sort of like people who are primary collectors and really love this stuff pretty calm, who like aren't over leveraged and are like more sort of like, hey Jake, like I really like this stuff, is now a decent time to buy, that type of vibe, because they're like, or should we wait, for it to go down more? And then I feel people who are more very passionate. This isn't you, but like very passionate about like very, very passionate about like the money side, and just the money side being at sort of what I feel is like an all-time. But again, it's not like prices haven't fallen more since 3 months ago overall. Like obviously there are some things that have, but there are other things that are setting new records or going up right now in my view, in my estimation of the overall market. And so I feel like that's coming from the fact that it's not gaining or recovering. Like there might have been a certain group of people who felt like it was going to shoot back up, or it took them a while to understand what was happening. I don't know. What do you make of the general sentiment? That's part of why I feel more comfortable to be more neutral right now. I feel like I felt like a huge responsibility, right, during the boom period to be like, this is irrational exuberance. This is complete and utter irrational exuberance. But given how far we've fallen, how low some of these prices are on like ultra rare, super like secret rare cards, does it feel like a bag at $5 to buy rainbow? Like we're getting into territory where it starts to become like people just seem to think that Pokemon should be worthless completely. And like, that's fine. And I can't predict the future. Like, but like when slabs of the best cards that are 1 and 2 boxes to buy aren't even going above $25 in a PSA 9 or $50 in a PSA 10, how much farther can it go without like us just saying there's zero market for that era at all, which could happen. Like that 100% could happen. But we're not talking about like these Rainbow are selling for $400 to $500. We're not talking about, now we are seeing that with the alt arts, I'm concerned, a lot more concerned with those and what could happen with some of those cards um, in the long run. But just to give some examples, and then I think your vintage stuff, it is pricey. I mean, $1,000 is a lot of money. $500 is a lot of money for most people. But every day I'm looking on, sports and comics and seeing a lot more things sell for $50,000, $80,000. And obviously these are much bigger markets, but relatively it just doesn't seem for the cream of the crop of set cards in such a huge franchise. It just doesn't seem like that crazy to me anymore. It there are certain things that seem quite overinflated, and maybe I'm too bullish on Pokemon, which I'd be fine with, because again, part of how I protect myself is I try to buy things as low as possible. And again, I'm a collector at the end of the day, first and foremost, and I never, fully leave that. And the more financial or investment purchases I make are an attempt to make some more capital so that I can go after more cards for my collection and rinse and repeat. But yeah, and people are saying like they don't like rainbow rares because they just don't like the look of them. Like that's completely valid and fine. And you may change your mind in a few years. We'll see. Often these things cycle and people don't like things and then they like are fond of them later on. And that isn't telling people that they don't like them right now, but it's just often that's how hobbies work as things age. But and just they become like more rare and less everywhere. Like I can see a scenario where, and I think we're already seeing this, where a lot of WotC stuff disappears. A lot of those PSA 10s, they just aren't coming on the market now, and we can theorize different reasons why that is. But, it might, and some positive, bullish, some bearish possibly. But I think the market is broadly a bit more bearish than bullish right now. I don't think I agree with Pikachu on the sort of like that he's worried people are too bullish. I mean, obviously, if you fully agree with like Sean from Reserved Investments, like, and that's and he's a smart guy, and that's totally understandable. And you think that like just investing in like mass produced pop culture collectibles are just it's stupid.
And I like a lot of Sean's content, and I think I think he's a bit too bearish. I don't think I'm as bearish as him, and I almost think he might be a bit too bullish on the established things like certain coins, and
yeah, it's one or the other. Yeah, I mean, I think both. Yeah, I guess slightly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You said a lot there again. But I think I took a quick note. Like when you said something, it's been a little bit now, but when you said something about people that are worrying about it, inherently, if someone's worrying about it, like I guess at a baseline, the majority of people who buy Pokemon cards don't worry at all. I think, and I might be wrong with that, but I think the majority of people are literally just like, I buy this pack, I open it, here are my cards. Lately, it's getting more mainstream. People go on eBay, they buy a card. Very frequently, when I sell a sub $50 slab, whether it's this one with PSA or whether it's this one with CGC, I will get people that message me, is this an authentic product? Is this a real card? Is this like, they know nothing about any of it. And that's fine. Like they're clearly just getting into it. They're just looking for cards. And that's a common thing. Weekly, I get people saying like, I like Charizard. Should I buy this one or should I buy the other $30 one in your store? And some of that's a little bit, I guess, investment side, which one's gonna maybe be worth something longer. But a lot of people are like, is this a real card? Is this a genuine card? So they're more on the consumer side that just literally they'll never sell it. It's going to be consumed, attrition. It's going to leave the hobby, go away. Inherently, though, like anybody who's worrying about the long-term value, they're more, I guess they're not guaranteed to, but they have more of a profit motive or incentive. Like when I entered the hobby 8 years ago, I devoted $5,000 to it. And I literally said, I'm spending $5,000 on this hobby. And if it all goes away, that's fine. I mean, I've bought things over my life that I just bought them as a consumable, never intended to sell them, was fine with them going to zero. Getting the utility of like, ooh, I enjoy this collectible thing. It brings me pleasure, it brings me nostalgia, whatever.
Mhm.
And then through adding thousands of hours due to my passion and doing all this, I've turned it into a business. But yeah, um, inherently anybody worried about the money to some extent, I think, is thinking more about long-term value. And you touched on modern a little bit, like these really expensive PSA 10 alt arts with several hundred in the pop report, 80% PSA 10 rates. Generally speaking, and I don't know how much you agree with this or disagree, but I think a lot of those are disproportionately more baggy than the PSA 10 WotC cards. Even though WotC, early WotC, they printed a ton of it. Literally metric tons of it.
Mhm.
By the pallet, by the tractor trailer load, by the hanger full. But attrition and these cards that they printed hundreds of thousands of, there's only 50 or 100 or a couple hundred PSA 10s years later. But these ultra modern ones, a lot of these cards, the normal trajectory is the first PSA 10, the first black label will be up here. And then they'll bleed down as more boxes get opened, as more cards get graded. I think a lot of those cards, the first handful of transactions very well might be the all-time high that card ever achieves.
Mhm.
I think in 2020, I think this card, and I could be wrong, and if I'm wrong, I'm going to be doing well. I'm going to be financially very in a good place. I'm already in a pretty good place, but if this card, I do not think it will ever go to $1,000 again. I think the all-time high is in for this card. I think the all-time high is in for a lot of cards, largely fueled by the fact that PSA is going to be grading 10 million cards a year, and largely due to the obscene premium. In peak hype, people were paying $1,000 for a card that you could get from a box, and you'd get 14 of them on average, and 80% of them would grade PSA 10, and it was a $5 raw card. Maybe it was a $10 or $20 raw card in the peak hype, but I think it's a $5 raw card again today. That's bags.
Yeah, I mean, this stuff this stuff is hopefully fairly common sense, right? In this, there are two different discussions happening, right? One is like the actual cards that are not going to continue to be flooded by the pop report, like the cards that and that are going to have really high demand, probably always, and may see multiple generations of demand. Plus, like, I mean, if you know, so and then you have cards that maybe 1% of the total population is graded potentially, and it got up to like $1,000 because the grading companies were closed down, and so no one was able to send them in. And people who didn't know that there were tens of thousands that could be graded bought them at $1,000, thinking that like it's Pikachu, and it's like there's only 100 in the pop, like so it must be amazing, right? Like those events have happened over the mania, and there are a few examples of those types of things. But to me, like that like absolutely, I would be very careful with cards that you think have 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 only had a tiny percentage of them graded. But also, like, where's that card at now?
The Pikachu?
Yeah.
It's still like I should pull it up. I think it's like a $200 PSA 10.
Yeah. You know, it's a
I,
much more reasonable purchase at $200. Like, I definitely don't. That is not the card I would by any means would go to as a vehicle, like an investment vehicle or anything like that. But it's and I would expect those to be graded for a really long time and continue to be graded probably. But there's a lot of speculation. Like I heard on PK stream tonight, Ryan, cool trainer Ryan, saying that there's that he had heard that there's like pallets of legendary collection and pallets of Skyridge out there, like thousands, like people who have like 1,000 of those boxes, like things like that. Like like if that's really true, like wow, you know, like then and if there are a lot of people who have that, who have, you know, blocks and blocks and blocks and blocks of those promos, for example, yeah, I mean, it's part of why I do like, you know, you know, it's like I have trophies here that there's supposed to be 6 copies in the world. Like, you know, I mean, it's it is possible that those things are true. I also think it's possible that that's a gross over like exaggeration, and not
Well,
from Ryan necessarily, but from the person who told Ryan that, or like that, like, or like, what is pallets? Like, is that like a few hundred, like one person has versus a few that, like, you know, it's there's a humongous difference in these types of things. And I guess I just think that like it's amazing to me. Like, it's very funny to me because in this hobby over the last 6 years, I have gone from being an extremely bearish voice to being extremely bullish voice pre all of the upside, then to be probably the most bearish voice that I knew. You know, maybe with you, Dan. I know you weren't really on YouTube yet, so you weren't able to like be as public about it, but like you would come on my video and we talk about it, about sort of the mania, to now being like somewhere in the middle, I guess. And it's interesting, you know, and I guess I try to be um, I try to listen to all sides and use sort of the majority of what I'm hearing to kind of place myself where I think I should be, if that makes sense.
yeah, and I
Um,
guess just touching quickly on the whole
yeah.
legendary collection palette thing. I wasn't listening to the live as it happened. I don't know the complete context of it. As far as I understand, though, I think a pallet is like 600 boxes, roughly
Mhm.
100 cases. Because I mean, people like Rudy, they transact by the pallet from
Mhm.
distributors and all that. I did the print run presentation in our Patreon back in September of last year. For a set like Legendary Collection, big estimation, a lot of assumptions made, all those disclosures. There might have been somewhere on the realm of like 200,000 booster boxes made. For a palette to remain today, that would be really shocking. One, because of like the value of that. Because I mean, at 50,000 a box, that's $30 million worth of product. But from another respect is, if 200,000 booster boxes were printed on day one, that's only 3 or 400 pallets. So for one individual to have a pallet, I guess that's kind of a different conversation, I guess, but
I
that would be
Yeah,
extensive.
it would be extensive. You know, I think that so I think that the way that I think about markets is that you want to be bullish when people are bearish, and you want to be bearish when people are bullish. You do not want to be a perma bull or a
I
perma
think
bear, generally
just
speaking.
quickly, I think that works a lot better in something like the S&P 500. Going back to that, the S&P 500, the future of the S&P 500 and the future of the world, the future of human innovation and human advancement are intrinsically tied. The future of the world and the future of Beanie Babies and the future of Pokemon are not intrinsically tied. So I don't think something like that works at all in Pokemon.
That's not right though. And it's right, and I made that exact point, but it's not right that any of the specific companies that you could be putting into. So okay, here's the point of behind that though. Let me just put a finer point on it. The company that you are investing in has an incentive to increase its value over time. Okay? So when you buy a stock, you and the company, your incentives are aligned. The Pokemon company does not care about the secondary market that much, and certainly does not care about WotC product or about older stuff being extremely valuable. Okay. So the Pokemon company is not going to be your ally. You are not, by investing in Pokemon cards and vintage Pokemon cards, you are not investing in the Pokemon company, in a stock in the Pokemon company. Okay. So that's how it's different. Now, this argument that Pokemon is not as necessary, or specifically cards are not as necessary as companies or big multinational companies, it honestly depends on the company. I mean, there are plenty of companies that now,
That's why I went for
yeah, if you talk about a 500 index or things like that, we're starting to get more to where I completely agree with you.
yeah.
But basically your argument here is that if you think that something is always going to go up, it makes sense to go contrary, is what you're saying. So the S&P 500 is always going to go up in this theory, or is very likely to go up. And so you want to buy when it's low because you know it's going to recover. You feel very confident in recovering. Whereas in this market, you don't feel confidence that it's actually going to go up again. So there is no buying low. Is that what you're trying to say?
Things like this going up,
Yeah.
I'm getting some feedback, I think, through I don't know if you turned my volume up or something.
I don't hear anything.
I've heard my voice come through a couple times, but things like this might make people cringe. This might make people retract a little bit. Similar to NFTs, in that you need someone to buy it from you for more money down the line. The S&P 500, in my video, I touched on it. It's a $20 trillion, $30 trillion market cap. It is the combined output and efficiency of 30 million plus human beings going and working, and some of them consuming Pokemon content while they should be working. That was a joke that was made on my video. But yeah, like where I kind of jumped in is when you said the whole perma bull, perma bear thing. I think that in a collectible, in a as Reserved Investment says, in a pop culture collectible with certain life cycles, some amount of them don't make it into the established thing. Lionel trains and whatever else he points at. You should have been a perma bear in things like that just failed. Individual companies, you should be a perm. But when you talk about a broad index like the S&P 500, it is much safer to say, and I'm not a financial advisor, but I am highly confident when I put in $20,000+ a year, maxing out my 401k, and then several thousand more maxing out my IRA. I am extremely confident that 50 years from now, when I need to draw from that, as long as humanity has continued to exist and excel and increase efficiencies and that will be orders of magnitude higher, generally speaking, historically speaking, 8% higher per year over the past 200 years or whatever.
That's not the argument, right? You're kind of like, you're saying something that I agree with and arguing that because that's true, so you're arguing that Pokemon is going to fail then. And so it doesn't make sense to ever be bullish in Pokemon because Pokemon is going to fail.
I think
SP 500, which definitely won't fail. And my argument is that it's about risk. So
like the whole Warren Buffett thing.
When you believe that Pokemon is going to do well, like if you were a perma bear in Pokemon, so there are a few different things here. So one is there are businesses, and frankly, Dan does some investing too, which is now strange given the bearish perspective that he seems to have on this. But
on 99%,
yeah, okay, fine. But okay. There are businesses who are constantly flipping and reselling. They're constantly buying below market, selling at market. And as long as there's liquidity, it doesn't matter if prices actually go up. This is also true for eBay, for PSA. Like these places, they don't really care if your cards go up as long as there's enough, as long as people are constantly selling through them and they're constantly making a percentage.
It's like this. It's like this. They're selling consumables. They don't care what happens to it long term. They're just making a margin.
And you're making a margin on this,
like a retailer, like a Walmart
and so
a McDonald's. Yeah.
Dan doesn't need like Dan and Nick and all these guys can still make their money and have a business, and all these streamers can still make and have their money, the business, without Pokemon being investable. Okay, so I just want to clear that up for people so that people understand how you can have sort of a bearish investment view, but a pro sort of like businesses could still function in this environment, and there can still be like margins and movement to make that way. Okay, so but now going back to what we were talking about before, and my point is that if you are investing in something and you view it as an investment, and you can just say this isn't investable, so I can't possibly view it that way. But generally speaking, you are a value investor is looking is looking at what other people are saying or seeing or willing to pay for something, and you are saying they are too bearish or they are too bullish, and you are basically a contrarian to some extent on the rest of the market, coming in willing to buy something where other people aren't, or willing to sell something where other people aren't, right? And so in Pokemon, if you're a perma bear on everything or a perma bull on everything, now no one is that way and actually functions that way. But like theoretically, like, yeah, it doesn't even make sense as a thought experiment, because you would just never ever sell. You would just only buy. If you were like for upper and bull, you'd just be like, well, it's just going to go forever. But like, how would you get more money to actually put in it? But whatever. But you have people who are uh, um, like the perma bear is basically never going to buy anything, and the perma bull theoretically, and so would have zero product basically, and would just be the people who are in the chats, and other places saying, I have nothing, you guys are all going to lose your money, like that sort of thing. And the perma bull would be the person who, I guess, never sells, just like is constantly buying, is constantly building their position at like any price or something like that. Now, I think that it's with the S&P 500, let me break this down. Okay, so with the S&P 500, there's a strategy, there's a general strategy. How am I going to phrase this? Now we're comparing stocks and Pokemon, and I'm having trouble doing this without mixing up terminology. Okay.
And that's just where
Yeah.
I tried jumping in against the whole perma bear, perma bull thing. Like I think it works in something that's intrinsically tied to humanity, and it doesn't work in Beanie Babies, in Pokemon cards.
Explain why it would work in that and not in this. That I don't understand. I don't understand your argument.
The S&P 500 is literally humanity. The S&P 500 is intrinsically tied to human advancement. Warren Buffett talks about this.
That's not. But why is it okay to be a perma bear or a perma bull of something like that? Wait, I don't understand your argument. Yeah, I'm not understanding it. Why? What are you trying? I get that that's what that is versus Pokemon, but why does that matter?
And it's been a few minutes now. I forget exactly what you said, but you started saying something about when the broad sentiment is negative, you should be positive and you should be this. And like there was a long time in Beanie Babies where the broad sentiment was negative and they were all right. And I'm not saying Pokemon is Beanie Babies, but that's where I just like in the stock market. What did you read The Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham?
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Market right now is having one of his days. He's put everything on sale 25%. It doesn't make sense because the underlying Coca-Cola, the underlying company, Apple, Tesla, all these companies, their underlying core profit machines, their underlying core technology, innovation, all that stuff hasn't fundamentally changed since January 1st, 2022. So,
but this doesn't make sense, Dan, to me. Like you're arguing about how to determine the correct value. And I think we need to get off of this probably, but you're arguing to me, you're saying that we can't, I agree that with stocks, you can more easily correctly value the company, we could say. Obviously, you have PE ratios, and then you can talk about like expected earnings in the future, and you can say, you can look at the PE ratio versus versus sort of your projected expected growth, and then decide what multiple on the P, what multiple is acceptable basically to you in terms of buying that stock. What does that have to do with what we're talking about with people being, because like, okay, I'm going to take it back to Pokemon for a second. So for me, if I think that in the next 20 to 30 years, the Pokemon market is going to triple, and I think that everyone around me doesn't think that, and thinks that Pokemon isn't going to grow and doesn't view this at all like that, I then say it's time to be bullish and buy a lot right now. Right? If I look around and everyone thinks it's going to go to the moon and I don't, then it's time to be bearish. There are people, though, who no matter what the prices are, they think it's going to fail. And there are people who, no matter what the prices are, seem to think that it's always going to go higher. And I don't understand why you say that I think both of those ideas are potentially flawed. You might think that certainly the higher one is flawed, but the bear one isn't flawed in anything other than the S&P 500, and I completely disagree with that idea. Now, it's all about timelines, though, because then you're saying you can't make money on anything unless there's something that always goes up indefinitely, which I don't agree. There are things that could have 20, 30, 40, 50-year windows. Then there are things like antiques, pieces of art that have had hundreds of years of success and gains, but they're not the S&P 500. They don't have a PE ratio or anything like that. So I think you're conflating ideas, and you're right about them, but one doesn't mean the other one. Does that make sense?
I think somehow we have a disconnect in what we're having different conversations and not really. Yeah.
What am I missing?
And maybe that was me. I guess I don't know. If you want to just continue where you were headed with Pokemon.
What am I missing about that? Or you don't even know now?
I got a bit lost.
In what I was trying to say?
No, I guess in where we were just having different
I
conversations
think so.
altogether.
Someone like Sean is never going to put $1 into this market, probably, because he's a
does,
perma
though. He's mentioned he buys in
specifically the Pokemon market, let's say, or the graded video game.
He does buy graded video game. He's mentioned that he actively flips in some of it.
So
It
then
doesn't
he's
make
not
sense.
a perma bear, right? But there might be
No,
perma bears,
you
right?
can be a perma bear and you can still
Flip or resell, but
you
that's
can hand out the bags. You can
okay, but that's different. But then you are a perma bear, and what you're doing is not investing. What you're doing is, we could either use the word like social arb momentum investing, which I hesitate to use because I don't really like using the word investment for that type of thing. Or what I prefer is just like, you're a dealer. Like, you're a reseller, you're a dealer in the market, and you're not.
Yeah, like Mason is in our chat. He is as close to 100%, I think, as you can get to just a retailer. I don't think he talks about setting much back. He literally just buys it wholesale. He buys collections at some percentage of what he'll resell it for immediately on the floor later that day. He is just a retailer. He is the Walmart of he buys it and then it resells it for more and makes his margin. Rusty and me at a fraction of what Rusty's doing, we're more in the we do that same thing, but that's only a portion of our business. Some amount of my business is indeed speculation investing, in the sense that I hold certain things. I set certain things back thinking that they'll grow more in the short to medium term and I can sell them for more, get a better return on my capital, setting them back for some amount of time. And like when I bought my trophy Pikachus, I intended to set those back for several years. I mean, I still have them. It's only been a couple years later. But yeah, there are certain things that I think there's a disconnect between the market values X at this and it values Y at this. And those two things don't make sense. This one's a way better deal. So I'm going to generally buy the deals, sell the overinflated things. Again, I'm a bit of a retailer, a bit of a business, just transacting, making my margin, but I'm also a bit of an investor, as much as I don't like to say it. I hold certain things with intent for them to go up over time.
So when I invest in things, I think about competitive advantage. I think about moats. I think about, right. And obviously, as we've talked about, and Rainy Day has this point here, and this might have been what, I think I agreed with this exact point and put a, and explain that. And then, but I didn't understand why you need this and why you can't be bullish or bearish and switch that smartly within a market that may not last as long, is my point. So for example, like there are companies that don't last forever because they lose their competitive advantage. In fact, this happens all the time. This happens to S&P 500 companies all the time. If you go back in the 80s, and then you would have seen mostly Japanese companies. If you go back in the 90s and 2000s, you're going to see companies that barely exist anymore, or a fraction of what, so obviously if you're investing in S&P 500 index fund or these types of things, you can, that's different. But if you're investing in individual companies, there's still times when things have shelf lives and things have periods where they're relevant and where they have a good business strategy, and periods where they don't. It's the same thing with collectibles. It's the same thing with everything potentially, where the collectibles function or purpose is to be connected with, to be enjoyed, to be appreciated, to be a store of value, to be an investment. Like that is the value of all of it. These have value. These are things that are valuable to people and have value. There's reasons why people collect these things, just like there's reasons why people buy Coca-Cola. Now, it's very different. Now, why I think the more salient point is that the Pokemon company, unlike the Coca-Cola company, who your interests are aligned, you are not aligned with the Pokemon card company. So if you believe in Pokemon's future, it's actually smart. If you could, be smarter to buy into the Pokemon company than to buy into any one individual secondary market collectible, which may or may not follow the same pattern. Now, what is very difficult is to predict like pop culture collectibles and how they would do to some extent. And it's far more risky. And they can, and Dan and I, definitely in 100% agreement. And obviously like have argued this many times on my channel. The risk fundamentals of something like a pop culture collectible, even one as potentially big and has good potential to be established, like Pokemon, like something in the Pokemon would be, versus something brand newer, like a new card game. We could talk about that, Dan. but it's there's going to be less risk, but there's certainly going to be even a lot less risk in doing a individual stock like Coca-Cola, who's been around for an extremely long time and has much more of a competitive advantage and moat, and is going to probably continue to fight. And then there's even a lot more risk in a McDonald's, a Coca-Cola, a Starbucks than a larger index fund. So I think we can all agree on that. But the point I was making was the framework that I used to become successful in the Pokemon market. Now, a lot of it could have been luck, and I'm never going to know like what percentage of it is just luck and just the influencers made me a bunch of money, all these types of things. But I have switched how bullish I am or bearish, and I don't think I've switched. I think I've just responded relative to other people and relative to where the market was. Do you think that's smart, or do you think that it doesn't make sense to do that at all, and that you can't do that in any sort of pop culture collectible because that's where I'm kind of unsure, because it doesn't necessarily have,
anytime these like stock terms are used in collectibles or Pokemon in general, I just recoil a little bit, and I don't really like it, the whole time in the market versus timing the market. But I don't want to get too much further into the weeds since we've already gone there. But
okay.
If you had been say how you went into Pokemon, when did you go in exactly?
Like 2016, towards the middle to the end of the year.
So in 2016, you went into Pokemon. Yeah. If you went into Beanie Babies, which as far as I understand, I think they were starting to be made in the early 1990s, 93, 94-ish, maybe. Mm-hmm. Some of those early ones. If you went into Beanie Babies, if you went into Lionel Trains, if you went into any of those failed things like that, you would have been being a bull. And I'm not saying, again, I'm not arguing that Pokemon is going to fail in 20 years from now, but it could. I think
you and I are in agreement on that.
It's too common of a sentiment that like Pokemon is the highest grossing media franchise of all time. And And one thing that I hate, and I mentioned this in my investing video, I used to go to work with so many people that saw the stock market as a casino. And I would try to tell them, I said, if the S&P 500 goes to zero, the world as we know it has ceased to exist. And again, we're probably going down some path that I might be making some argument that doesn't even make sense compared to what you're trying to say. But being bullish when people are being bearish might not work. In the S&P 500, it always has. And if it fails to in the future, things are really bad. The world has fundamentally changed. So that's where I just don't like any stock terminology being used in collectibles for those fundamental reasons. I don't know if that makes sense. I don't know if I'm arguing something completely different.
Well, I don't agree in the sense that I think you can be a value investor in anything.
You
Like,
definitely can.
but it's just about understanding risk. To me, the conversation is understanding the risk fundamentals of one thing versus the risk fundamentals of another thing. So I don't really like, and we can just say it's stupid to like think about investing at all in any collectible ever for anything. And I just think it's like that's a bridge too far for me, and it takes it a bit, and it takes it a little bit too serious, honestly. Like it's okay to like, now are people going to be misled? Like the people who come out and say that Pokemon is better than the S&P 500 or could be better than, or definitely is, and doesn't talk about risk and downside, it's very obvious how I feel about that. I mean, Liquid Marketplace, their new sort of like marketing campaign is all about how collectibles do better than the S&P 500, and showing memes and all sorts of things to kind of, prove that fact and show that fact.
PWCC does that too.
Yeah. And listen, I don't even like, it doesn't even bother me that much. I think it's a little bit like,
They're the ones handing out the bags. That's what bothers me. A
yeah.
lot of people are going to be hurt by that marketing. I went to work with people, and I said this in my video. I worked at a company. They didn't have a fantastic match. A lot of companies will, if you put in 6%, they'll put in 6%, whatever. My company, if you opened an account and put in 1%, they would match with 1%, and then it would entitle you to profit sharing annually every year. The 10 years that I worked there, the average profit sharing was 3%. So literally opening the account, putting in 1% would turn into 5 instantly. Guaranteed 5x on your money in a tax sheltered account. So like say you make 40 grand a year, $400 a year. If you get paid every week, that's $8 a paycheck. You would have to put in instantly, guaranteed for free. They would put in $32 per paycheck. How many people in my company do you think it was in what do you call it? It was auto enrollment. So you had to physically opt out of it to remove yourself from it. What percent of my company do you think didn't have a 401k? It should be zero. It should be zero. 20% of people opted out of a free 5x of their money. And I knew a handful of them. I knew them, and they were Dogecoin investors, and they were Shiba Inu investors, and they were Pokemon investors, and they were and they saw the S&P 500 as a casino. And I tried having this argument with people. I talked about how we work for a company. The company I worked for wasn't in the S&P 500, but we sold this Apple. We sold to like Tesla. We sold to a ton of companies in the S&P 500. And I tried, yeah, I'm getting into this rant mode where there's a specific reason why I don't like the investment word. You can buy Pokemon and you can enjoy it and you can love it. A lot of times, not a lot of time, some amount of times, the things you buy are going to be worth more years later than when you originally bought them. And that's great. I went out to dinner earlier today. I spent 10 times more than I could have if I just ate at home and made my own dinner. But I spent 10 times that for an experience, hanging out with some friends, and I got nothing from it. I got the experience, I got the memories, but like a month from now, I will have forgotten that. If I open this Evolving Skies booster box, if I buy this $30 slab bag, it might not be worth $30 in 5 years, but it'll be worth like 5 or 10, I would think. So yeah, that's the rant, I guess. that I continue to go on. And the intrinsic value thing, I said this in my video, and I think you disagree to some extent. Pokemon cards can have fundamentals, and certain cards can be better fundamentally than others. But in my opinion, the intrinsic value is zero of everything. The intrinsic value of an Illustrator PSA
That's
10 is zero.
that's that's a weird. I mean, it's all semantics at the end of the day. It depends how we define intrinsic. If intrinsic is physiological, biological necessity, then you and I are in agreement. But if intrinsic, like, does a TV have value? Does entertainment have value? Is there intrinsic value in shows? Is there intrinsic value? If there's intrinsic value in art and intrinsic value in experiencing anything, this has intrinsic
I would
value.
call those
Now,
all extrinsic.
no,
Like,
intrinsic means that it's in the item itself. That it's in it is in its
like I come from coins. If I
yeah.
buy a Morgan dollar, the
Mhm.
intrinsic value of that is the melt value of the silver enclosed. Like there might be a $20 intrinsic value in a coin that's worth $50,000 because it's a rare mint mark in PCGS 68 with a what's the sticker on it? CAC sticker on it.
Mm.
Again, that's maybe that's getting too into the weeds, and we don't need to have that discussion. But intrinsic versus extrinsic, a bit semantics.
Let me look up a definition because now I'm curious.
Peak That Chew says he's having deja vu because we've definitely argued the intrinsic versus extrinsic before. Like
We
the
have
intrinsic value of a company, like the intrinsic value of Coca-Cola is taking all their PP&E, property, plants, and equipment. They have some base value of just literally their factories, their equipment, their real estate, and then like their cash flows, and you can do their discounted cash flows into the future. They have an intrinsic value that their stock is worth based on their earnings, based on their physical intrinsic. Let me pull up the definition too.
Yeah, so um an intrinsic property is a property that, yeah, and we're getting into definitions here. Pull that
Yeah,
up
way
first.
way too
But
semantic, I guess.
I guess a better word, and Chris put it here, is I lost inherent value. I don't know. But yeah, intrinsic. If we're defining intrinsic, and I think you might be right. Intrinsic property is a property that an object or a thing has to itself, including its context. So, like, yeah,
Like the intrinsic value of this would be whatever the plastic's worth if you were to melt it down and recycle it. In my opinion, that's the way I understand it.
versus okay, interesting. Okay, so it's just the value of the. It's not a value of how someone experiences it. It's just
Like
a value of
like this is literally the same thing functionally. Intrinsically, this is the same thing as Logan's PSA 10 Illustrator. His has older, rarer, minter, better. His has the scarcity, the history, those are all extrinsic factors though. And again, this is it we're living in the weeds, but I think it's interesting conversation still. I just don't like intrinsic value because to me, intrinsic value means if you when you buy Coca-Cola, let's do Berkshire Hathaway because we both I think really like Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. When you buy a share of Berkshire Hathaway, there is a floor. They literally have billions of dollars of cash. That stock cannot go down to zero. Functionally cannot. It doesn't make sense because they have an intrinsic value of hundreds of billions of dollars. I don't know how many trillions of dollars their market cap is, but like Pokemon can, and most of it will, whether it's 10 years, 1,000 years, or a million years, it will all go to zero. And I mean, a million years, Berkshire Hathaway, yeah, it gets silly if you go too far, but um, yeah, interesting conversation though, I think.
yeah. I'm not sure I like get the like how that is.
A lot of it goes back to risk, I guess.
Yeah,
I
it's all
like
risk. Like, I don't like, to me, there's no, it's not like it's weird to couch it. And I'm not sure you're doing this, but I feel a little bit like it's like this thing has value and this thing doesn't, versus this thing's the value of this has more risk. That I agree with. If that's what we're, obviously. And,
and I think the Pokemon space, generally speaking, needs more bearishness in
yeah,
general. I don't think more bullishness is needed. Um, I think at least the people that I interact with, the people I
yeah,
know in my day-to-day life, the S&P 500 needs way more bullishness in most people's lives, generally speaking.
it's so
Not a
funny. So
financial
I was
advisor.
gonna show, yeah, that's really funny. That's interesting because because I feel like
I mean, your
every
dad is literally a financial
I
advisor,
feel like
right?
almost every single person is bullish on this, on the S&P 500, and tells everyone to put their money in index funds. Like every single person.
Words though, not I mean, you can see
Sure,
it is
but
public data. You can
but
see
why don't
average
they do it?
balances.
Because it's not quick enough, because it's not fun or interesting. I don't think they
Human
don't do it
beings,
because people are bearish. You see the
most
difference, Dan?
most people can't. Not only can people not think and plan for 50 years from now, most people can't think and plan past
But you're
next
arguing
Friday.
that
Or
you're arguing that, like, I think there's far more bearishness on investing in collectibles than there is investing in S&P 500 index. I don't think the reason that people aren't investing in the 500 index is because it's people are more bearish on that than collectibles. I think it's because, as I said before, it's boring to people. It doesn't make necessarily as much sense. They can't hold, it's not as fun. They don't feel like they can control it as much, and they don't feel like they can get rich as quickly, or as, and all that sort of thing. They don't have as much control over it, and they have to worry about what these hedge funds are doing, or, but there is definitely a movement out there. And I was actually gonna, before we were doing this stream tonight, I was gonna do, excuse me, a different stream, which I'm still gonna do, which is getting rich quick, a whole conversation on getting rich quick.
a lot
And
of
I'm gonna
people spend their
show,
whole lives trying to get rich quick and just stay
and
poor slowly.
exactly. And I wanted to show a video. I mean, we could do it as part of this stream. I mean, it's certainly where we're going irrelevant. But I was going to show this long video of this person basically saying that the SP 500 is a complete scam. Like all of these people, using all of these kind of like psychological and emotional tactics to get people to sort of believe that. It's very interesting. It's very fascinating, but um, I just think that there's bringing it back to Pokemon. I think that I agree with everything that you've said, and have stated all those things many times on this channel. I think where maybe it's not it's a disagree in degree, and it goes back to that risk or that negativity. And I think maybe we also disagree on the broader environment right now, where you think people are still way too bullish by and large, and I think that it's maybe somewhere in the middle. That there are people who, and that it really could go either way. But I definitely think that that and very much promote um uh there is big risk in this stuff, and I really think it's best right now. It's best suited as a enjoyable collector experience, while understanding that there is some potential upside on some items, maybe even a lot more items than Dan thinks, which I do think. I do think that there's more potential on a lot of items, and including modern items potentially.
And
Um, I
I
did
think
not think that as much a couple of years ago. I have shifted because of the difficulty to pull, how many booster boxes have been opened, the expense of the booster boxes now, and the amount of people in Pokemon and still in Pokemon right now. I've shifted. I've become slightly more bullish on modern, but only if you're buying it at like $5 to $10 and you're buying like the rarest stuff. So it's like,
I think we're more in line than you realize. Like
yeah,
when I throw out 95%, when I throw out literally 99.9% of cards will never be worth more than their retail cost. A single booster pack costs $3.99, 40 cents per card. 4 billion cards are printed every year. 0.1% of that, 40 billion, is 4 million. 4 million cards a year. I don't think there's many more than 4 million cards a year. Maybe there are. Maybe that's too much. 99%, then 40 million cards a year are never going to be worth 40 cents again. So when I throw out a big percentage, like 95%, I think 95% of slabs are junk slabs. Bags is I should have said this at the beginning. Bags is almost synonymous with junk slab in a lot of ways. It sounds crazy and it sounds scary. Like, oh my God, it doesn't mean 95% of what
so
I have or
let's get
95% of
specific.
what.
So we avoid specifics like the plague for a variety of reasons.
Well, this
Let's
is
be a
specific.
little let's be a little yeah, that's good. Let's be a little specific and a little actionable. Where do you draw the line? Give me the line, Dan.
I,
What's
I've
what
said it.
is
I've
where's
said
the
it
stuff
before.
that is right at the line? Maybe give me your maybes right at that line, and then the stuff that's I know the stuff that's super negative. Give me the stuff that you think will or does have the potential to grow in the long run from where we are at now, and give me the stuff that's right in that line, particularly that line I want to hear.
If less than 1,000 of them were made
Yeah.
universally, and this is going to be an important distinction. If less than 1,000 were made, they are a good card. But some of those cards that fall in that subset are not a good buy at today's market price. Everything is about what you pay. So like there's no such thing at like every card is good and bad. At $10, this is a good buy. That's too cheap. At $1,000, this is a terrible buy. The PSA 10 Illustrator at $50 million, it's way too much money. At 5.275 million, maybe it was too much money too. So like no card is just going to be always a good buy at whatever the market is transacting at. I want to like preface it with that first, but generally speaking, if you're buying them at the right price, anything that's been printed less than 1,000 copies and any PSA 10 and sometimes 9, because a lot of times the overlap between PSA 9s and 10s, they're functionally the same mint card. So mint cards.
So you reject the argument that all tides. You reject the all tides argument. The argument
All
that
rising tide lift all boats.
yeah, that the higher end stuff, if that keeps growing, that your alt arts, your rainbow rares, your whatever's in the next generation, that stuff, but that stuff will not grow.
Rising tides lift all boats that don't have holes in them and aren't like broken in half. And so some amount of boats. And this is a beautiful card, and it's not the Rookie of Pikachu because it's the second one, right? But like Jungle Eevee, it's the Rookie of Eevee, and it's a great card. But there are so many. The current price today doesn't make any sense. The price 2 years ago made even less sense. And maybe I'm wrong. I very well could be wrong in all this.
Yeah.
And if I'm wrong, it's
Here's,
to my financial benefit.
here's the problem. So it's all supply and demand at the end of the day, right? Everyone knows that. Demand is hard to predict. It's something that I will, say it till I'm blue in the face, because I think so many people who are giving investment and speculation advice are just talking about demand, and they're telling you what they think is going to be the most in demand. And they say demand is what matters. Demand is what matters. And of course, demand is extremely important. Yeah, ancient meal, right? No one denies that. Okay. But it's hard to predict. Okay. Now let's look at supply, right? We know that some things, as we've said earlier in this cast, that there's some items that just have so much supply left to come in, you know, And those items we can guess that because much more supply is going to continue to come in, it's going to need that much more demand to keep it going up. Now, what's hard to predict though, Dan, is, and part of why so much modern did well is because there were so many people who wanted to invest but only had 25, 50, $100, that they could only stomach the risk or the emotional difficulty of buying lower value things. And so one thing that can be interesting to think about is, how difficult is it for a $25 card to get to 100 or to get to 200 versus a card that's $1,000 to get to $5,000, $10,000, right? And this idea that only the top 5%, only the most expensive stuff can continue to go up over time is something that's thrown around a lot in collectible spaces. And a lot of it is based on dying hobbies.
Like Beanie Babies, some of them are still worth a few
Yeah.
grand, I
Yeah.
think, right?
A lot of it is based on the fact that when there's a lot less demand in a hobby, the stuff that there's a wide variety of things that are printed more than the amount of people left in the hobby. This is the best way to think about it. So you have 100 people left in a hobby, okay? And there's some items there's only one of, okay? There's 2 items that there's only one of. There's 100 people who want that item desperately because these are extremely passionate people, right? And
Mhm.
let's say they have quite a bit of money and they're willing to kind of bid each other up, right? But then there are items that there are 1,000 of that each person only wants one of. That item has zero value, right?
Mhm.
So that's the best way for people to understand this. Now, here's where I push back though, is that because people say this, but like we may not be at a point in Pokemon history right now where the chase cards from our modern sets, there may not be enough to go around in the future, because the Pokemon hobby could expand a lot bigger where there are 50,000 of these and there are 150,000 people who want them. And because they're at a lower price point, it's easier for them to go to $50 to $200, $50 to $500. It's what we saw. People wanted a Charizard. They wanted a Chase Charizard, right? They
Mhm.
couldn't buy the PSA 10 first edition Charizard. They went to evolutions, they went to the full art, they went to the rainbow rare, they went to these items that were a lot less rare. Now, as supply continues to come out, those have gotten absolutely destroyed. I was the biggest person saying
Well,
Evolution Charizard is the worst possible card you could buy in this entire hobby. When the PSA 9s were going for $1,600,
it's still
purely
crazy what they're going for, like, to me.
120, yeah, 100, 120. It's still a lot, but purely because, right, of that supply side, we just knew the wave of supply. But eventually, now that card, the supply is going to last for so freaking long, like unbelievably long, and they're going to
Mhm.
continue doing reprints. I really don't. Yeah, that card's a tough one, even though the demand is so great. But there are cards that alt arts, right? And I think that they're too expensive right now, whatever. But there may come a point if those drop, like some rainbow rares did, like some hidden fates did, where there might be some buying opportunities in even those, even though I understand that those are not level X's. And I want everyone out there to understand that those are not level X's from those middle generations where the print run was so much worse, where it was so much difficult, where the supply was so much lower, where people had no idea what they had. So the attrition was crazy high. Like, it's a different thing, but that doesn't mean that with enough growth, those could be valuable. Are you putting those in your 95%? That's where this debate is, because I think we agree on almost everything, but it's sort of like
Mhm.
where that line is. And I'm more bullish than you on on some of these cards at the right price point, getting to that $200, $300 price point in history. Now, some of them are already past that, and I think it's ridiculous, and
Yeah.
that's where we might agree. But yeah, what do you make? What do you make of all that?
And again, generally speaking, as long as if you're buying them at the right price point today,
What is the
raw,
risk price point? That's the tough part,
that if you're buying a broad sweeping statement, which any generalization is just wrong usually because it's too painting with too broad of a brush. But generally speaking, buying PSA graded cards, it's you're giving money to PSA, you're giving money to the dealer who graded with PSA. generally speaking, most people who buy PSA graded cards are gonna be losing money on those to giving the profit to the dealer who graded it, giving profit to the grading company, the selling platform, all that. And again, it doesn't apply for the 1 to 5% of cards that will have good price trajectories over time. So yeah, it's I think I think a PSA 10 $700 Moonbreon. I think that card is just gonna its long term price trajectory is just gonna bleed off into a long term decline. Hype periods, it'll go up and down over time, but long term price trajectory is just down until it goes to zero whenever Pokemon dies in 10 or 100 or 1,000 years.
Yeah, I don't think that that's 100% necessarily true because it's only $700. This is where you and I disagree. Like, it is
And
possible that Pokemon gets way bigger than it is right now.
what blows my mind is that's so much money. Have you ever seen the stats out there? Like,
It is.
I know people in real life, and everyone knows people in real life.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make up a number, but like a majority of American households cannot afford a $600 or whatever the number is, $1,000, $2,000 expense. If their water heater dies, if their car needs exhaust and whatever, most people can't source that money on any given day. Like, how is that card $700? That blows my mind. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know where this money's coming from.
Well,
It's
first of
all
all,
crazy.
a lot of people aren't actually selling it or buying. So,
But
one thing that happens with market cap, is that we look at it and we're like, "Oh my god, there's 800 of these and they're $700 each.
not
How
all that
is
money
there
actually went in.
5.6 million,
Yeah.
whatever?" And it's like, "Well, really there's only like 10% of that is actually transacted or something. 5 to 10% of actually transacted." So, a lot of it is that. That's how high price points can easily get established, and if the market gets flooded with them, then the price will obviously go down. Um, but I would also tell you, right? Most people who are getting that card, Dan, are not paying for the card. They're opening packs, and they're the lucky ones that happen to pull it. So
Oh,
they're not spending $700, right?
I've been looking at my phone the whole time and I forgot we're in StreamYard and I can actually see the live chat if I just clicked on comments.
Uh,
Sorry,
that's
I've not been like texting on my phone or anything like that. I've been looking down at my phone for the YouTube comments and they're right here.
so
Um,
why I say that is that most of these cards are not getting onto the market. Now, a lot of the graded one, but like most of
a
these cards are
shocking
not getting
amount
onto the
though.
market.
I looked and for April, I think it was April or maybe it was the past 30 days when I can't moderate from in here. That's the only thing. Um, if somebody can take care of that chat bot. Um, yeah. Now I'm gonna lose track because what was I just saying? I got thrown
Yeah,
off by that.
I was
Oh yeah,
talking
yeah.
about
So,
yeah.
so over the past 30 days, whether it was April of 2022 or whether it was the prior 30 days from when I looked, but that PSA 10 Moonbreon, it had sold like 30 times in the past month or something, like a shocking amount. Like I think there's 700 graded and 30 of them had transacted over the prior 30 days, which is like, I mean, 30 over 700, roughly 4 or 5%, kind of a decent amount. Um,
Sorry, I'm just laughing at people in the chat.
yeah.
They're talking to the bot.
looks like nobody wants to moderate them away. They just want to chat with them.
What up, bot?
I got thrown off by that. So Mason actually had a good question that he popped in the chat a few times that I saw.
Okay, let me grab. Yeah, we're happy to take some questions and comments, and we can throw a bump on the
Yeah.
screen. So let me.
Do you see the one?
I think just to summarize before, even though it might relate to this, the truth is that like in the scheme of this market and as partners, we know each other really well, and Dan and I tend to agree on a lot of things. I think that Dan is like 10% more bearish than me or something like that right now. He's a little bit more bearish, but both of us still think there's a lot of risk. There's a lot of
I
downside.
quit my job to do this full time. I
Yeah,
mean
but a
that
lot of that is based on what I was talking about earlier, which is that he doesn't think the liquidity is going to disappear and that he's going to be unable to like, make margins and move marginal product. That's very different than, viewing it as an investment. So let me find this Mason quote, but
it was
hopefully
something about
it's been useful for people to sort of hear. And, I think anywhere you lay on this is fairly reasonable. Again, I really think people who are, people who are like, complete doom and gloom, people who are complete, but you're a little doom and gloomy, maybe a little bit, Dan, for me.
but again, like in this
But
space,
yeah,
generally speaking, I think this space
yeah,
needs more traditional bullishness and more like risky bearishness, generally speaking. Again, generalizations are bad, but
yeah. I think again, it all comes down to what we're saying. Like, are we saying that you can't make money or this won't go up at all? Or are we saying that it does not make sense to do this at all based on the risks and that it'd be much smarter to first build a traditional investment portfolio? Because I'm going to repeat, we are not financial advisors, but both of us feel that way about ourselves. So we can just talk about through our experiences. Both of us 100% would not feel comfortable putting $1 into this hobby as a speculation or investment or however you want to call it without feeling comfortable in other investments and other things. So, and that's definitely true for both of us.
one fascinating thing, one thing I love about this hobby is you can buy, like if I wanted to buy Apple on Monday, I can't buy it for 50% under market and sell it for market or vice versa. I can't grade it and sell it for a margin. It has a market price and it transacts at that price, and that's all you can do. The illiquidity of this, the fact that cards don't have a singular price, an expert in this industry can perform really well. Whereas in the S&P 500 index, that benchmark, most industry experts fail to match or beat that benchmark. So you can passively invest in traditional assets and beat the average person. Whereas in this one, you can really excel. And okay, this is the question I was after from Mason. Do you want to go for it first or do you want me to go for it?
Go for it. You wanted this question. Go for it. I want to hear your opinion.
Generally speaking, most collectibles, most fail. Most go to zero, I think. Furbies, Beanie Babies, Pogs. I've got my tech decks from when I was younger. Legos are probably an exception. I still have all my Legos from when I was younger. There's a lot of like modern sealed investing Lego talk versus vintage, and interesting things in Lego probably align a lot with Pokemon. But yeah, generally speaking, I think Pokemon is safer. Reserved investments would argue that is not yet an established, what does he call it? It's still in the speculative phase or whatever, but
Speculative, established, declining. I'm not sure what terms he uses, but those are the ideas.
I think he's
there's
called
like established collectibles that were established but now are declining. I don't know.
I don't fully buy all his classifications. I think they're too rigid. But anyways, I think he would define Pokemon and like Magic as more, they're in the later stages of speculative. If they have another couple good decades, I think they can move into the established category. But yeah, I think given Pokemon's track record, given that it's a 25-year franchise that's still going, I think it's a lot safer than most other collectibles, because most things sold in this day and age, most things sold in the past 20 years marketed as collectibles are really bad investments, are really bad longer term. They go to zero. They don't do anything. Like the Franklin Mint, I have family members who collect all these collectible board games, all these collectible diecast cars, all these collectible Lionel trains, things like that. I've talked about it before. I forget what video, but like kind of a sad, kind of a grim thing. But the brewery that I live like 30 minutes from, they sell collectible steins. Back in 1959, the first steins released, the first edition, they made like 1,000 of them. And those ones are actually fairly scarce, fairly rare, decently valuable. Today, though, they're coming out with serialized 1 of 800, numbered 1 to 800, and they're selling them for $100 a piece. And the demographic of that hobby, of the Stein collecting hobby, is very old. It's literally a dying hobby. The average collector of it is in their 60s and 70s, and I'm the 30-year-old that is collecting the same stuff. But a lot of, I mean, it's really morbid to think and say, but like the grails of that hobby, in 10 or 20 years, I'm pretty confident they're all going to be cheaper because literally everyone who owns them today is going to die. That's really weird, and it's not fun to say or think, but it's a fact. I think Lionel trains are in the same thing. Pokemon, there's a risk that in 50 years we could be that demographic. Nobody else, not enough people from younger generations could pick it up. I do see though, like my wife's a teacher, third grade. I send like the McDonald's booster packs to class with her, and they're like little goodie bag prizes that they can pick out. Tons of kids love Pokemon. I've got nieces and nephews. My kids love Pokemon. I think it's safer just due to its 25-year track record. The fact that it's not just us 30-year-old investors buying it. Some amount of kids still are. What percentage that is, nobody really knows. But so yeah, I think it's better than the average collectible. That would be my general take. I don't know about you. I kind of went on for a while there. And I'll be right back.
I mean,
I'm gonna still be right here, but I'll be right back.
Yeah, I mean, nothing to disagree with there. I mean, I think it's such a weird time, man. I mean, it's so weird how quickly everything skyrocketed and went up that I think it's just very hard for me to judge, where Pokemon is at, how much it could still grow. I don't feel very comfortable in comparing it to anything. I try to compare it to comic books and sports cards because they just have been around a lot longer, but it's sports cards have all sorts of other things going for them. I do think that I really believe, and I said this earlier in the live, that the health of the businesses and the health of the the large influencer channels, and the health of, all of that type of stuff, and the health of the Pokemon company first and foremost, and the health of the card, tiny card, because cards is a tiny, just a tiny percentage of Pokemon's revenue. If that stays healthy and profitable, that's the stuff that I'd be watching. As far as like comparing it to like other collectibles, like which ones do I think are better? I mean, I definitely think that sports is massive. Sports cards are massive. I mean, I also think that sports has even more ridiculous prices than Pokemon for certain things. Like that market is even more just all over the place and crazy. But as like an overall market, do I think it's more likely for the Pokemon card market to disappear or the sports card market to disappear? 100% the Pokemon card market is more likely to disappear than the sports card market. I think, I mean, the only counter to that would be that, but I just don't think that's true. I mean, I think with the huge boom in sports cards, it's been really driven by people our age also. So I think they've had a huge renaissance of like 30-year-olds super into it, just like Pokemon, So, but I think both hobbies are in a really good place. I think Pokemon's in a really strong place. So just the price has got so freaking high so fast. It's crazy. So, let's see. Do I have anything else to say? Let's see. Actually, do you think both? Yeah, I mean, certainly when we compare it, I mean, I think cards, I can look at it two different ways. One, you're buying into to a very popular thing. So because of that, I guess, and the key word here might be safer. There is safety in that it's less likely to go to zero than buying into like a brand new thing where there might be more upside if it really explodes or gets really popular. And I don't just mean like a brand new TCG. Let's take like graded VHS, DVDs and Blu-rays and that's been going up a lot. People have been speculating, making quite a bit of money, probably losing money here and there. Like, do I think that Pokemon is probably safer, or more established than something like that at this point? Like, absolutely. But do I think that it's like a better investment? Maybe, maybe not. There might be more upside in the short term and the long, there might be some better plays there. So I don't know. There are lots of ways to think about it, but generally when something is more established, there are more fans of it. There are more people that enjoy it. It's certainly less likely to go to zero or something like that. And the more businesses that are involved and the more shareholders, so stakeholders. So let's see what we got here. Let me know if you see any questions or comments or anything that you want to address. So I want to look at this. So Skippy FX says some of these things a few times. So who is telling people to close 401ks for Pokemon? Throwing some disposable income in products we enjoy that based on experience have a chance to grow. What's the issue? And I think that
going back to what I said,
yeah,
1 out of 5 people, disproportionately younger ones, literally turned down a free guaranteed 5x of their money. And these were the people that, again, and this is anecdotally, this is a small sample size, one person at one company, but anecdotally, these people were literally shunning a guaranteed 5x in traditional investments. In 401ks, you don't even have to go into the S&P 500. You can go into a money market fund that has a guaranteed 3% return every year. And again, on top of that base 5x that you get from the company match. So these people literally exist. You might not know any of them. You might not think they do, but some amount of these people exist that shun all things normal. Oh, Pokemon has returned 20% per year. My credit card interest is only 12%. So I can put it on there and make money. I saw somebody asking, are people going into credit card debt for Moonbreon? Tying in another question.
Yeah. I mean, I think the reality is that like the vast majority of people in this hobby are, probably behaving just fine for themselves. And that could take a variety of different forms, from I'm just open a few packs here and there and it's freaking sweet, to like I'm super hardcore and into it, but I'm careful with budgeting, and I sell a decent amount to recoup. Like, so the issue is going to be in the smaller percentages of people who are really have that, like, I want to get rich quick. They, ignoring um sort of risk completely. That may just, for you, Skippy, like, absolutely, like, you might just be like, I'm just throwing some dispensable income in some products and I hope they go up and I don't really care other than that. And it's like, sweet, like I do that too sometimes. Like sometimes I don't put that much thought or that, go that deep into it or care that much. Sometimes I just like something, I want it, and if it goes up, great, it has a chance to grow. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. I think that's perfectly reasonable. I think that's very different than like, I would not buy this if it didn't grow. And the reason I'm buying it is because I definitely think it will grow. And, I'm being told it will grow, and I'm consuming content that's constantly telling me it will grow. And I'm constantly anxious and nervous all the time. And I'm, in some sort of echo chamber. And again, I think it's the minority, but a lot of, right, what we're talking about is it's because these topics are interesting. It's interesting to reflect on the dangers and the risk. And Dan is certainly right that lots and lots of people do not invest in the stock market or in many traditional things for a variety of reasons. One, because they're scared, they don't understand it. But two, it can also be boring or not a quick enough return, or, there's all sorts of things. Again, I can show this video. There's a video I was going to do tonight that I said earlier that has, like, this guy's, got 150,000 subscribers. Like, he has tons of people in the comments saying, like, you're my guru, like, you're amazing. And he's just telling people that it's all a scam, and that society's, that all this stuff is a scam, that the markets are a scam, that people aren't actually making money. They're not actually getting rich by doing this. It's all just like a scheme to continue, like, propping up this, and like you should put all your money in like Bitcoin because all companies are going to zero and everything's just going to be coin. Like, it's like there's a lot of people, there's a lot of ideas out there, and sometimes when you just hear reasonable ideas and then you hear someone complaining that not all ideas are reasonable, you can think that they're being like over the top, but like it's probably because you haven't been like, you know, hearing those types of points also. Hopefully that makes sense. But Skippy, it sounds like you have a great attitude, so just like keep doing you. Anything to add to that?
No, I'm really intrigued by this video, and but I way too common of a sentiment in my own personal experience that the traditional investments are a lottery or a casino, and just generally shunned by that just goes into personal finance and people's general lack of discipline or education in it, generally speaking. And that's a whole different rant that I could go into.
Do we think people are going into credit card debt for the Umbreon? I have no idea.
Some amount of people guaranteed. I mean, definitely. But what amount of people is that? You
Yeah.
can look up the average credit card debt by every American, and very US centric based thing. I don't know much about internationally how big of a deal credit cards are, but yeah, it's again, like in my mind, 30 people in the past month spent $700 on that card in PSA 10. And I think it was Basic. Basic found that number for me that I was trying to remember. I think it was 60 something percent of American households can't come up with $600 or $1,000 if an emergency were to happen. And I just know a ton of those people in my day-to-day life. I don't know anybody. I know a lot of people in the Pokemon space. I don't know anyone in my personal life that buys any of these cards. Almost nobody. No, literally zero. I don't know anybody.
Well, they also they might, and they're not telling you. Like, how would you know?
Could be,
Like,
but
how many people
and I'm
go up
kind of
to
a recluse
strangers?
too. My
Yeah, how
wife
many
and I are
people
home.
go up? How many people have you told? Like, you just go up to people on the street and you're like, "Hey, like, I'm into Pokemon cards."
But I mean, I know I have dozens and dozens of family members, and then fairly close friends, and I guess there are a couple old coworkers. Again, I people I used to work with that didn't put into 401ks that invested in Pokemon or Dogecoin or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, Basic hitting us with all the stats. He's got the Google searches going on. Average credit card debt per household is $6,300. So they must have all went out and bought 20 UPCs.
So Wesley has a question for us. It seems like a lot of Japanese vintage cards are around 50 to 60 for nines. Do y'all think that's still a bag? It's a great question. What price point do y'all think would make sense to buy long-term holds for Japanese nines?
I don't follow Japanese too closely. What are the raw mint cards? What's the availability of them? Most of the bags are pretty obvious. The worst bags are like when the card's available plentiful, raw mint for if those cards are available raw mint, I don't care that grading costs 50 today. It's not going to cost 50 forever. If those cards are available raw mint for 20, those are bags. You shouldn't pay $30 premium for a piece of plastic and a piece of paper that's 3 cents. Graded
So,
card premiums are absurd.
here's what I would say. So vintage, so I'm buying a lot of those, like your Japanese Watsy hollows. I'm targeting more at like $25 to $30. There's some that are a little bit more expensive. And the reason is because like you can find these online, you can source them still, but they don't seem to just be endless and endless. And also, you can buy quite a few of them, and they can come and have a bunch of scratches on them and not be nines, or have a little bit of edge where that was hard to see, or have bends or different sorts of things. Because so you can end up spending quite a bit of money, sourcing these cards, and then find that a large percentage of them actually aren't that in great condition, and you would have actually saved money by just buying the slab. So when you get into sort of these like, $30, $40 for these types of cards, these types of like old vintage, popular, fairly high demand hollows, I don't think it's like amazing, but I don't see these as like a bag. That's just my personal opinion. Um, you know, I have no idea how many are left, probably a humongous amount. But at the same time, like when we're talking like this amount of money, the cost to actually source, grade, test, try, it's like, could you probably make some more money? And would it probably be better to like go onto Buyee a bunch and scour and source and try to probably still at these prices? I prefer getting like the tens at like, if you could get those at like 70, 80, 90, if they drop to there, I think that that's better because I just think it's much harder to get a 10 than a nine. Um, but Dan hates 10, so, but
Tens are bags.
yeah, exactly. According to
Tens are just nines that got lucky.
yeah, but again, they're tens and it costs money to get tens and tens are tens. And it's like it's I've talked a lot about on this channel that we may find that we were in a grading mania in the sense that we may look back and tens were way overvalued and people care more about like having nines and eights and these types of things. But there's quite a bit of history right now in other hobbies for grading now. And that has definitely not been the case. But part
What
of
about
what's
in coins? The whole 80s thing with the coins. A
part
lot
of
of those haven't rebounded, right?
yeah, and part of what's tricky about and I think an important point here is that the easier it is to basically get just endless tens and nines, the less premium that these things will have. So if it's very, very easy to get lots and lots of nines and tens, you're probably paying into the mania to just get that plastic. Whereas if it's quite difficult to actually source those and it creates quite a bit of condition rarity, then there's going to be more value there likely. So that's how I would think about that. And everyone just has to decide their risk tolerance and what makes sense to them.
So here's an interesting thing anyone
Yeah.
can pull up. And maybe, can you let me share screen or no?
I don't think so.
Or wait, maybe I can already.
There's probably a way, but I don't know how.
Do you mind if I do? If I have permission? I think I do.
Yeah, give it a try.
I think it'll pop up on the bottom and you'll just have to put it, up into the, I've got way too many tabs open like always.
Yeah, give it a try.
You can see it at the bottom. Can you add that to this stream? Yeah, so here's this is the PCGS 3000. PWCC has a similar thing. I forget what they call it, the PWCC 100, PWCC 1000, whatever. So basically, this is an index of whatever 3,000 coins that they deemed worthy of entering this index. Look at that bubble. Look at that peak in the 1980s. I would not be shocked if 2020, 30 or 40 years from now, looked like this. Because I think we are in a grading mania. Here's history. It happened in coins. It doesn't prove that it's going to happen in cards too, but it would not shock me at all if video games did this, if coins or
Also,
if
is
cards
this
did this.
the entire market, Dan? I'm sorry, or just certain coins? I mean,
So right here, disclaimer: the PCGS 3000 reflects the particular coins being offered for sale may not have been included within particular indexes. So yeah, it's I don't know exactly what's in it, but it's 3,000 different graded coins that they were trying to replicate an S&P 500 or whatever with. And
sure.
I wasn't there. I literally wasn't. I wasn't born.
One thing I would say, right, is that there are a few things, right? One, how big is the coin market compared to today? Right, is the first thing you want to look at. The second thing is, were these huge spikes in prices because this is the first time they ever graded coins and people thought that they were much rarer than they actually were, which goes back to my point of that people in the beginning, like if you are buying these really low pop cards that they're only low pop because they haven't been graded, hint, hint, video games is way more at risk for this than vintage WotC hollows, because in my opinion. So, particularly the English PSA 10 first edition. But that's a whole nother thing. But that is what I would guess. Without coins is not like listen to it. I like to follow it a little bit, but it's definitely, and any coin experts, or knowledgeable coin people in the chat, please let us know. But that would be my guess, was that maybe there was the first, there were some really, high, but I could be completely wrong. Maybe when did do you know when they started grading coins, or were there specific coins that were being graded for the first time, or what
It
was
said
happening?
1986, so that would have been right around here.
Yeah. So that could, right.
That
So
fueled the
people,
mania.
so the answer can be like, people greatly underestimate the amount of something out there. We saw this in Wizards of the Coast. We saw this in sealed product, right? Dan and I were out there, I had a channel at the time, but I was constantly being bombarded in every live chat, people saying there couldn't be that much left. The pop reports couldn't possibly go up. And, and I was just like, and now tonight we have like Cool Trader Ryan coming out saying there's like thousands of legendary collection boxes. Like, I think that's probably, I don't know, who knows, but the point just being that, like, at that time, it was like, there's none of this. Like, people were coming to me and saying, I bet there are only like 15 of those boxes left. Like that was the sort of attitude. I wonder if that was the same sort of attitude here, driving up those prices. Like, this is my only chance to get this. There's not going to be a lot more of them. And then as more and more of those coins were graded, people realized it wasn't that rare, and it started to affect the price. I also wonder just how many people are into coins now versus then. I know coins have done well, during the last couple of years in this market. Do you know, Dan, like, in terms of the actual size of the market and the depth of the market in terms of like across generations, like how many young people? I know we have some great coin experts in our Discord. I don't know if any of them are here that do.
I don't know. Like, I've collected off and on coins for the past 15 years, but I never got much into grading. I was like I was a set collector, binder collector,
Yeah. So,
filling out those Whitman folders.
because I think that Pokemon, a lot of stuff was graded already. I wouldn't expect that same sort of thing to happen to everything, but like a Jungle PSA 10 first edition Pikachu or an EV PSA 10 first edition Pikachu, it might look exactly like that. An unlimited PSA 9 Charizard might look exactly like that graph, where it's like, but that doesn't reflect that Pokemon is dying or anything like that. It reflects one momentary misunderstanding of how much of the supply. And even if demand grows over time, if supply outpaces demand, it'll still stay stagnant or go down. So that's just, some speculation there without deep knowledge in the coin market. And maybe if anyone in the chat, or afterwards, wants to share some information, maybe I'll do some research and I can do a follow-up post if I'm wrong here, if I, but that's what I would guess. On the fly live. Yeah. So Wesley, so I guess we, Dan and I have a hard time. Like, it's I guess I can show like, I bought these at like $20 to $25. I preferred these over like $50 to $60 Wantialos. Like, they're all fine. I don't think any of them are terrible bags personally, but I wouldn't be, depends what we mean by bag. Again, it's like, if you like them as a collector, it's not a bag because they're cool cards and you're getting them pretty cheap. That feels very different than like, and I think a lot of people buying them are more in that category. I have a hard time believing that there's certain, higher priced items that I think people are buying still more for investment than maybe those. But there might be people who are, taking the bag on that too. And I don't know. So, all right, I'm running out of steam a little bit. How you doing, Dan? I'm getting pretty exhausted.
I'm ready to call it whenever you are. I'm doing fine, but it is getting late here, and
let's do we can do a couple more if anyone has anything. I think like what really is like a huge bag for me, or a much more likely bag, are people who are paying $100 for surfing Pikachus. Like, there are things that are just so much more obviously a bag than this. That's what I would say, Wesley.
Yeah,
So
it's all a spectrum, and
yeah,
the worst offenders are $1,600 PSA 9 Evo Charizard,
yeah.
$1,000 this, and maybe this isn't as bad. I guess it only fell 80%, whereas a lot of the Evo type stuff fell 90. And people in chat are having a little bit of confusion about bag because like securing the bag, getting the bag, those are like positive things that you want. But a bag holder, you don't want to be the one left holding the bag at the end. That's where I guess the term came from. As I said earlier, slabs being bags is kind of synonymous with like junk slabs.
I should have
That
put some fire emojis in the description. Then people
yeah,
would have known that we were saying positive. Get
yeah.
those bags.
How many bag holders are on here tonight? I sell the bags.
What a dick.
I, I I I've been thinking about making a video for a while, and it's hard to like. One thing I was worried about, and I'm still gonna make a standalone video at some point, but it's hard to not come across. It,
You should. That would be a hilarious title for that video. I sell the bags.
it's hard to not come across as like pompous, I guess, in a way, and
Yeah.
I don't mean to. But yeah, I have sold quite a few bags. I'm selling in
I mean,
some
I
things
bet.
that I sold that I thought were
Yeah,
bags. People made 5 times their money on.
yeah, exactly. Because
For
I was about to
context
say,
for context, yeah.
like when I bought a ton of stuff right as the hype was happening, and I was buying it like at market, I knew that people were making money on me, but I felt very confidently it would go up a lot more. So I was willing. That's fine. So I don't
I sold a lot of these that I thought were bags at the time,
know.
and I sold them after I quadrupled my money on a lot of them, buying them for 80, 90 wholesale each,
Yeah,
and then I was selling cases for 3,000, and cases are still today 4 or 5,000, I think.
you fool. I always knew that was a good one.
Yeah,
So
yeah. that
my
that Evo
bullishness never
Pikachu music
wavered on
video.
evolutions.
Yeah.
Didn't you see my video where I said evolutions is going to 10K? It's getting there. It's getting there. It's going to take a while, but it'll get there.
Uh,
Yeah. What a world. What a world. Um,
Chat's liking the convo.
all right. All right, people. I guess I can take this comment down. Let's see if we've got anything else here. I'm just looking quick. Let me know if you see anything. As always, we appreciate
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a
being
lively chat.
in.
It's been fun.
Yep.
I wish I knew I could see it the whole time. I can't comment in here, so to comment I still need my phone, but I forgot we were in StreamYard. Zoom is not good. StreamYard's a lot better.
Um, yeah. Any last minute things to say? Any sayings? Any wisdom you want to throw out there?
I think I've dropped a few sayings already.
This is a good one to end on. Let's end on this one, and then we'll close up for tonight. What is the single best advice you would give someone entering the hobby tomorrow?
Ooh. It's just general good life and financial advice, I guess. Set a budget, be
I like all three of these questions that are coming up. I'm sorry, Dan. I think we're going to do a few more.
I'm good to go for a while. I guess it would just be know what you can afford and go into it with like reasonable tempered expectations. Go into only what you enjoy too. Like that gets a bit dangerous too because if you only enjoy junk slabs bags, if you only enjoy PSA 10 ultra modern at release, that gets dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, my honest advice, and it's a little bit, it's like literally plugging Dan, like understand how the businesses make money and watch what the businesses do. And understand that yes, like it like collectors made a lot of money, but like the businesses are like constantly selling and look at what they're targeting and what they're doing. Now you can do both. Like you can both resell and then hold back and keep the stuff that you think is going to do better. Obviously all that's financial stuff. Collectors, the obvious answer of just like collect what you enjoy. But I would also, if you're want to get the best bang for your buck type of thing, you know, Dan has a criminally low number of subscribers in terms of and people who watch those videos. And in terms of like if we think that there are people out there who like they really want to learn and they really want to see like what someone is doing who's like doing this every day, Dan is actually showing you and talking to you about like what specifically he's buying, what's working and what's not working. So like that stuff's going to be invaluable if you don't know it already. There might be a lot of people who know it already, which is part of why they prefer like these conversations, which makes sense to me. It's more of like, let's talk sort of broader, philosophical, all hang out together, type topics. But in terms of like the nitty gritty of like what people are doing, Dan's channel, Nick's channel, TCA, like those are the like seeing what they're doing, the ins and outs of that. I think is going to be your best bet. And just like hanging out in streams like this, lots of streams like this, asking questions, like we're gonna, learning about relative rarity of each era. There's tons of information that you want to absorb, and I would start with the stuff you grew up with as a kid and the modern sets. Open a few modern sets, see what you enjoy, and then start with a few. That's what I would generally do.
Have fun with it.
And would you keep selling into this market or just hold your bags at this point?
I'm a business. There's always a margin to be made. If it's going up, there's a margin to be made. Buy under market, sell at market. If it's really going up quickly, buy at market, sell above market or at the new market. So yeah, I always say, always be buying, always be selling, and just make your margin. If you're an investor, it's a more common thing lately. If you bought Evo at 1,000 and now it's 700, if you bought this at 1,000 and now it's 200, ouch. I don't really know what this, like, it's hard. I think this card, and I could be wrong, I think this card should be worth less than 200. So my answer would be very
it's a very upbeat answer.
Well, my answer would be very dependent on.
Hey, you bought a $1,600 Evolutions Charizard. It's down to 115. It probably should be at 50. That's
that's the truth, though. Like,
I know
if it's too low, hold it and wait for it to come back to where it should be.
Yeah.
If it's still too high, sell it before it continues to go lower. But knowing that is kind of hard. That's the difficult part. Take whatever you do, though, whether you sell it or whether you hold it, learn. Mistakes will be made. Don't let a good mistake go to waste. That's someone's quote. That's not my own thing. Don't let a good mistake go to waste. Learn from it. Someone much smarter than me, much wiser than me said that. And I try to do that. Learn from that mistake, whether you sell or whether you hold it, and try to not do it again. That would be what I would say to that.
Yeah, I mean, so, of course you should sell your bags because inherent in the idea that they're bags is that they're going to keep going down and they're not going to recover, right? That they're real bags but like if it's a bag that has been a bag because you bought it at 1,000, but now it's a much more reasonable price and you think that it could recover, then you should hold it. And no one can like make that decision for you. Like you can ask Dan specifically, like which cards we like, cards I'm buying right now, the prices I'm buying, I obviously think like I either really want them for my collection or I sort of want them for my collection, but I think they'll be good trade bait or I'll be able to make some money on them at some time and then put that into a card I more want for my collection. Or for me, part of it's just the fun. I just like speculating on stuff sometimes. It's just fun to like, I think this is a smart move. I'm going to buy I bought a bunch of Lugia breaks like 6 months ago because I just am like, you know what? Like Lugia, like I saw what happened to that Rainbow Rare Lost Thunder Lugia, and I said, these Lugia breaks, man, everyone hates breaks, but it's freaking Lugia, and like, let's see, it's not from Evolutions, so that's good. I would avoid those break cards.
Starmie break from Evolutions.
Yeah, I would avoid the break cards from Evolutions because the amount of product that was printed, and but like, stuff like that. I think it's fun. But my attitude about that stuff is very fun. It's not like it's not like I'm putting like very serious money that I need to live or something like that in that. I really I just wouldn't take those sorts of gambles. So what I'd say is like, when you keep selling into this market, like I sold the stuff that I really wanted to sell already a long time ago.
All the bags.
Yeah. So yeah. So I all the stuff that I have nothing. Like every card that Dan shows, I have 0 of those cards like in my collection. I have no interest in buying any of those. That's a $50 card to me that Dan keeps showing and he says it's $200. Like for me, like I'll never own that card probably, and I'm completely fine with that. There's a lot of that sort of stuff. Like let's see, what do I have? Oh, I bought Metazoo Wilderness at $140 a box. Those are my bags.
Big bag.
So I think it's the only item in my entire collection that's down from where I bought it. Like the only single item, because of how careful I am with every single thing I do. And I literally bought that because the last set went up to 200, and even though I knew there'd be double the amount in this set, I just wanted some on release and I wanted to open it and experience it. And I was like aware of the risk there, and that was a loss. Outside of that, like I'm so super careful. And with Pokemon, I'm like, because I know the market so well, it just doesn't happen. Like you just don't get caught in those things because you're just so cautious and careful. Now, if the market gets crushed again, like now I bought I think the things I'm most worried about right now are like some of the baby shinies that I bought. Like I bought them super, super cheap. The highest ones I bought were like graded 9s for like $11 each. I think $12 each. Direct I bought from like someone who was just like a fan of the channel, and he just was like barter. I was trying to get them for like 9 because that's what I was paying everyone else, and he just like really wanted to sell it, and I was like, all right, dude, I'll just do it for you, whatever, I'll take them. And those are the only ones that I worry could go down to like $5 or $6 because of just there's so many of them, and if the grading prices go down, but like those are the only cards that I feel like are a potential bag in my entire collection. So and should I get out of them at $11 each? Maybe, but like, I don't have that many, and it's not that much, and I can afford to get stuck with them. So to be completely honest with you, but everything else is sort of like a secret rare or better in Modern that I'm getting for super cheap that I think is undervalued. And a lot of it has already gone up in the last few months. I know everyone talks about how things continue to go down. A lot of stuff I've been buying has gone up slightly, now, just as Dan said, it has to go up hugely in order to actually make profit, which is a very different thing because I'd have to pay, fees, right? So there are a number of cards that I've made a little bit on, but I wouldn't say if I sold, I wouldn't be positive. I might be, neutral or even slightly negative. So I'm not calling these like successful, investments, nor did I view them as investments. These are cards I wanted for my collection, and I sort of waited for the right time to pick them up. So I don't know. I guess it's kind of a douchey answer, not that helpful. Dan said I sell the bags, and I said I don't buy bags. That was sort of the answer, so we don't have to deal with it. But like, I guess part of that is like if you did and you got into that, like you bought a bunch of Champions Path promo Charizards like $120 or whatever, like. PSA 10s, like, and you just didn't realize that there were like 40,000 of them being graded, like, probably the smart move. I hate telling people directly what to do because everyone's in a different financial position, but probably the smart move is to like sell it and put it something, unless you really like it, then who cares?
And some of it too is like it largely depends on your financial situation. If you're carrying these things on a credit card, paying 25% interest, if
Yeah.
you're unable to pay your rent if you don't sell it, like considerations like that vastly change the answer or make the answer very concrete one direction. But if you've put a few $100 in and it's turned into $100, it's like, again, I went out to dinner earlier and I just, some amount of money's just gone now. You spend money throughout your life and some of it goes away. You get a speeding ticket and it's $150 that just disappears. And I mean, it's just too case by case basis to really say.
So I like this comment. I want to highlight it. So the way I look at it, there's no reason for vintage to suddenly spike now. So either wait for prices to go down further until you see a consistent slow uptrend. What I do is I look for really under the market auctions and I pick those up if I find them occasionally, or I get like a strong CGC 8.5. Otherwise, this is exactly what I would do with the exception of low graded PSA 10, low pop PSA 10s. This is where Dan and I are very different, and it just is what it is. You know, Dan thinks their 10s are stupid, and he's entitled to that opinion. For me, they're disappearing from the market. They're just not coming up. So, that's where I'm a little bit more like, and I'm hearing about private sales and people interested in these. Like, I'm a little bit more of like, I think you have all the time in the world to get 9s and 8s and 7s.
Some 10s are better than others, though. I
get
do.
a good 10. Get a good 10.
Yeah. There are bag 10s and there are good 10s.
Yeah. Get a good 10. Yeah. But now good 10s don't exist in the level X era. So you gotta just get, that's a whole different era.
Just
They're
keep
all
resubmitting
bad.
your 9s until they turn into a 10 and
The
get
9s
lucky.
or 7s, the 10s or 8s in the level X era, as I tell people.
Yeah.
The Diamond and Pearl era. But in all seriousness, so like for me, I think that of course there's a lot of risk spending quite a bit of money on a 10, and I'm never going to sit here and tell you that like that's a good investment or anything like that. But those items also have more of a possibility to spike for the exact reason you're talking about here, which is that like there just are so few of them. Potentially, like if one doesn't come up for a really long time and some people are waiting for it, you could see that card spike back up. We've seen that already with some cards. Like I bought some PSA 10 first edition Watsies, and they've already gone up 70%, 80% from one low sale that I got in like a really low auction during a panicky time. So you might see that sort of pattern. You're not going to see that pattern on cards that are being sold every single day. There's going to be no FOMO buying. There's going to be no people bidding each other up crazy past the last sale. I'm in 100% agreement with you. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, Gakel or Gackle or Gakel. And I think I think that is the general attitude. Patience, rarity is the only thing that I would consider spending up for, understanding that it could disappear and not come back for a while, but also understanding that like rare items can be like very overpriced and there could be like not a lot of demand and it could suddenly drop a huge amount. So
and that's what I was saying earlier. Like even these good cards that aren't bags, every card is a bad investment, is a bad buy at a bad price. I mean, I saw that one. Yeah, that's a good one. But like if you like a PSA 10 first edition Charizard, amazing card, historic, it's had an amazing price trajectory. At the wrong price, though, that is not a good buy. I don't know what the lowest listed on the market currently is. If you were to pay $1 million tomorrow for a PSA 10 first edition Charizard, I would say that's a pretty bad buy, all things considered. And so every card has good prices and bad prices, and there's no card that like if any investment were to exist that was just always a good one, that would go away because everyone would buy. Even Coca-Cola, if everyone thought Coca-Cola is such a good investment, raising dividends for so many decades straight and blah blah blah, if everyone buys it and the price triples, it's not a good investment anymore because you're paying way too much for the cash flows for what it is. So I mean that's just a consideration that's a universal truth. There was one actually earlier that I don't want to lose. That was an interesting question, I thought.
Which one?
It was at like 120.
Oh,
128 from Katie Lowen.
here.
I actually intend to make a video going on it more in depth. I made a video earlier today where I alluded to like a future video, but when I buy, I just had, okay, here it is. Everything's always within arm's reach because I'm so disorganized. UPC, it's like the talk of the town, or it was for a few weeks there, a couple weeks ago. Maybe I'm late. I bought these wholesale for $88 a piece. I think it was somewhere around there. Retail's 120. I originally was allocated 30 of them. Today I own 15. Part of me is like, I should just sell them all, take my money and move it into something else because the price is appreciated so much. But like my price targets when I'm selling modern product, there's no hard and fast rule that I just always follow. Like if it doubles, sell everything. Sell half of it when it goes up 50%, sell the rest of it when it doubles. Sell it all a year later, sell it all 5 years later. There's no universal rule. It's all a feel thing. Right now, like given that I can't give you any universal rule, I can only look at specific things and tell you why I've done what I've done. So like Evolving Skies booster boxes. Today, these are $180 a box. I was allocated between all my distributors, first wave, reprint, all that, 60 or 70. Not a ton. I'm pretty small when it comes to modern product. And I don't remember the exact price trajectory off the top of my head, but I buy these for mid 80s a box. My break even, like I literally can't sell them for under 110. It doesn't make any sense. My break even is a little over $100. If I want to make a few bucks a box, I've got to sell it at least 110, 120 plus. So on the first wave, that spike up, I sold a lot of what I had from the first wave because I knew wave 2 was coming. When wave 2 is coming and I know the date and I know how much is coming, I'm going to just take my margin then because I know prices are going to go down in the future. The reprint came, it went down to like 120, I think. And I just held. I held my stock. I'm like, this box is already shown it can go 150 plus. There's no wave 3 in the pipeline. Let me just hold it, kind of speculating on it, investing in it, right? Short term, if you want to say that. But as of now, Danny Fantop, anyone who follows him, he made a story earlier on Instagram. He buys way more. He has a way better relationship with his distributors than I do because he's just a much bigger volume seller. Apparently in August, we're getting a reprint. It might be small. Maybe I'll look back and I'll regret it because maybe the price won't come down as low as I think it will. Maybe I'll only be allocated 2 boxes or something. But I listed and sold the rest of my inventory aside from this one box so I can show it in videos and stuff. But I sold the rest of my, I sold the rest of my Evolving Skies that I had on hand, speculating on the fact that given the August reprint, I think it's August and like December, it might have 2 scheduled already. The price is going to go down. So I want to get rid of it now and I'll get more later. And then this one though, I'm unlikely to get more. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. I'm not investment advice. I'm not this thing could go to 500 or 1,000 someday. I have no idea, but I'm not in any rush to sell it because I guess I'm more confident in the fact that it's probably out of print. And yeah, so that's just like the inner workings of my mind with a couple modern products. I saw that question. I intend to make a video on it at some point. See, Jake didn't buy those at 100 a piece though. He bought them on the restock at 35 a piece.
Yeah, and I got a slight deal on it, so I got it under.
So they're not bags. If you bought, I sold 50 plus Vivid Voltage ETBs for $100 a piece. Those were bags. When they reprinted them and they're available for 35, if you bought them at 100, not financial advice. If you like them at 100, you should buy 3 more when they're 33 because now you can triple your holdings for the same amount of money. But people don't do that. People get discouraged. They buy high, they sell low.
Yeah. And I will say that I particularly with sealed product, because I'm not comfortable with sealed product like I feel like I am with graded stuff and singles. I feel like I have a much better feel, and I'm more just enjoy it and I'm more engaged in that market. I'm very risk averse when it comes to like sealed, because I feel like it's just like such a crapshoot on what Pokemon is going to do and how much they're going to reprint, and how many waves and how much each person's going to get, and all, and who and what which LGSs and how much are they going to just flood TCG player, and how are people going to respond, and all these types of things. So for me, I'm very conservative. So like I bought like I remember calling Dan and talking to Dan. Dan's very conservative too, and I remember saying, like, should I I have an opportunity to buy like quite a bit of Evolving Skies around $95, or should I be buying like Chilling Reigns or Battle Styles at like 68, or should I like buy all of it? And I think like our feeling was like a little high maybe for Evolving Skies. Like we were a little worried, and I did go through and bought quite a bit of it because of just how freaking popular the set is. But like then that went up to like what 180 or something.
I hope you sold them, right?
I sold one. Yeah. Yeah, I still have the others, because for me, I might want to open some, keep some for a while. I don't know. I financially, I should have just sold them all at that price, but we'll see where all of that goes. But the point is that even at that 95 price, I felt I like wish it was a little bit lower, because even though it's really popular, I still just don't like buying it above that like $80, $85. Like I want to buy really good sets at $80 to $85. Like that's where I feel like there's pretty low downside. And 95, I felt like they could do more reprints, and like, there could be a lot more of it, and it could go even lower. I also made a video telling people that I thought I could go to 250, which I do. Like, I think all of that is possible. And I have the entire time. Yet I'm still that cautious. And that's why I don't hold bags. Like, that's why I like that level of cautiousness is why I've avoided holding bags the entire time. Now, have I missed out on some potential profits? Maybe, but the reality is I've been fully invested in things the entire time, because I always find good things. Like, it goes back to that, like, I pass up on a good thing to get a great thing sometimes. Like, that might have been a really good buy, but like I felt a little bit anxious and uncomfortable with it, so I didn't go like like as heavy as maybe I could, and then I spent it on something else where I feel more comfortable, that I felt was like a great buy way under market. Like that's how I function. I'm buying a lot not in Pokemon still, because I still feel like there's a lot of really great opportunity in some other places that still doesn't exist in Pokemon right now. So that's how I move around. But it doesn't mean that I don't think that buying at 140 or 150, it doesn't mean that you can't make money there. I just think you're just a lot more likely to hold the bag at that price. But and this is the problem, is that there's a lot of people out there who bought evolutions at $400, right? There's a lot of people out there who bought at $400. You could have held the bag, and there are people who think that it worked out, and it's $650, $700. But when you buy into a momentum investing sort of move, not really understanding how much is out there, not really understanding how much is open, not really understanding how much could continue to come out, you are taking a risk of holding a bag. Now, if you're aware of that, but you think there's enough momentum, good for you. And I'm glad it worked out. And I'm glad you didn't listen to to a cautious person like me, and you went for it and it worked out. But you have to understand that probably more often than not, it may not work out. and maybe it will work out, and someone's very good at that. Like, there probably are people who are very skilled at, they like taking a lot of big risks, but they understand how to just like an angel investor in some tech startups might be. They know how to pick them, and they know that even though it's unlikely any of them succeed, they're putting enough, there's enough upside that it makes sense, et cetera, et cetera. Evolutions would not fit, but it's and a lot of those people who thought that it would go to 400 also bought more at 1,000 and actually have made no money at all because now it went down. So it's like you're basically timing the market. And if you happen to buy it at 400, you were smart. And if you happen to buy it with the exact same logic at 1,000, thinking it would go to 2,000, you were dumb. But literally, I think both of those people were probably fairly similar, to be completely honest. And probably they're thinking, maybe that's not fair. It's definitely dumber to buy that at 1,000, thinking it will go to 2,000 based on just the amount of money it would take. But like, it's a lot of the same types of people who just, they're willing to hold the bag. They're willing to take that risk and that gamble. And again, all the power to you if it works out, but there's risk there. I don't know. Anything to add to that?
I just want to say welcome to Max quickly because I saw him hop in chat. He just woke up over in the EU.
Max.
Yeah.
Max is our hero. He's the hero of Discord.
I think you covered it pretty well, and I was kind of catching up on chat too while you were talking some. So some people making good Kevin Clear, fast nickel over the slow dime. That's a common thing I've heard. Kai Oak Bacon with a question. Thanks. Would you rather have 100 CGC 8.5 shiny, I don't even know how to say it, Taka, or 2 Evo boxes?
Where is this?
It was at 148. Give me the 2 Evo boxes, baby. We're going to the moon.
Oh no, Kai. What kind of horrible question is this?
Yeah. Give me the 2 Evo boxes.
I mean, definitely 2 Evo boxes, and I would sell them both immediately, and it would be much easier to sell is the honest answer. But like, if I had to hold 100 CGC 8.5, so what would that be valuing? I'd actually have to look at the evaluation to be honest.
Do they have subgrades or not? And were they early graded or recent grades?
I want to know all the details. Very likely evolutions boxes.
Yeah.
Very, very likely because of just the brutalness of having to own 100 CGC 8.5 shiny Stagatagas. I suppose you could list them and they'd slowly sell, maybe, but it would be a while.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you did have a super chat from Kelvin.
Yeah, appreciate the kind words, Kelvin, and thanks for the super chat. Really appreciate it, man. Glad you're enjoying. And for the membership, appreciate it, Kelvin. Kai, thanks for the
One thing I like on
you got it, man.
On StreamYard, you can make banners and you can make them scroll. Jokingly, I throw up occasionally a scrolling, not financial advice disclaimer when Nick and I are talking in the podcast, not tax advice.
Trainer Max, Mug First Edition. This is Max's prediction. This is the opposite of, not the opposite.
He's a permable.
But yeah, Trainer Max is definitely bull. I would say bull on the bullish side on vintage, which I appreciate.
I heard he's a big fan of modern sealed investing too.
Big fan. I've seen a lot of comments he's been making around. Big fan.
Yeah.
It hasn't gone up yet, so it can only go in one direction. Mason Berry says he didn't even know what you get with the membership. You get some like emojis if you want to use it. It's just, I just set it up. If more people do it, I'll make more emojis, that sort of thing. But it's just a small way of supporting the channel. No pressure at all to do it. Like, obviously the Patreon is the place where you get all of like the effort and work and time and value that we put in. So.
Yeah, so PSA 10 mucks are $400. I could see those going to $1,000 at some point, potentially. Not financial advice. So if you buy a good 9, crack it out, pay that $10 grading fee, now your PSA 9 muck has gone to $1,000 when it regrades the 10. I can see a path to that.
Pokemon Dean says the emojis are better than Jake's knowledge and Patreon. Got to sign up for that emoji. The channel membership over the Patreon. Yeah. And I can make some more emojis for people.
I hope you have Jake wearing the Pikachu hat evolution
I'll
music
add that.
video one.
I
Yeah.
wanted to add a couple of our Discord ones too, like you and Mason to it. Yeah, I will admit that they're fun to use. I really enjoy using them in response to things.
Membership should enable like GIFs in YouTube chat, because that's one thing that Discord has that YouTube doesn't, that's
Yeah,
severely lacking.
yeah, that would be nice. Um, got an opinion here. Here is an unpopular. Oh yeah, and by the way, Dan and I have ended Dan and I have talked for so many hours after we've ended, like after we've said, okay, this is the last thing. Dan and I will have these private conversations that just go on for like 5 hours sometimes. And yeah, and my girlfriend is like, it's like I get in bed at like 3 in the morning, and my girlfriend is like, what happened? And I'm just like, I don't know. We love talking, and we just continue to get on subjects, and we just enjoy. I don't know. All right, an unpopular opinion: ETBs are the worst yield investment now. B&B stadiums are what ETBs were when they were first introduced. Low print and mostly overlooked. It is interesting to see how, like, Pokemon, like how these narratives kind of change. It's part of what makes me uncomfortable with modern sealed product in terms of predicting what's going to happen, because like for a while, right, it was like, well, they'll never reprint ETBs. Like that was a saying. So people like invested a lot in ETBs. Then they started reprinting ETBs like crazy. Then they were like, well, they only reprint specialty ETBs. And then it was like, so you saw like Darkness of like you saw some of these not very good sets, frankly, like Darkness Ablaze, go up a lot in price with their ETPs, because the first print run, not very much. People thought it was set out there pretty widely on modern investing channels that they wouldn't reprint ETPs. They don't do that. They haven't done that. And the only ones they reprinted are like Shining Fates and Hidden Fates, because they don't have booster boxes with something circulated. Then they do these reprints out of nowhere, so it's all very, but yeah, I mean, rarity is important. I think what comes in it is important. I think the look of the box is important, like all that stuff. How important each thing is, I'm not sure. Obviously by far the best performing ETBs were the most rare ones. They've rivaled the only sealed product that has even gotten close to rivaling like things like Expedition Charizard or Lugia from Neo Genesis PSA 10 first edition, like these cards that have like 25x in value. The only ones are like those plasma ETBs, and it's because they were so rare, and also the sets are so super expensive. And Dan has them because he's a freaking genius. And my biggest regret in this hobby is not buying those. I realized that I should have bought them. I could have bought them at like $300 to $500. There were very few available, so it wasn't like I could have picked up a bunch of them. I could probably pick up like 2 or 3 maybe, but mistake. What did you pay for yours?
So ETBs I did well on,
Yeah.
but off of the success of that, and I need to make a video on it at some point. I thought about it a while ago, and then I kind of forgot until just now. But pre-release kits / build and battles.
Yeah.
I had a lot of them, just getting them through wholesale distribution from over the years, but I was missing a couple. Painfully, one of the ones I was missing was XY Evolutions. I don't remember exactly what I paid. I want to say it was around $800 though. I just looked on eBay. They're going for like $650, $600 to $700. So I guess I chased that one unwisely, and I guess I'm holding a bit of a bag with that. But overall, with all the build and battles that I bought, maybe I'm doing pretty decent still. But yeah, ETBs. It was unprecedented when they started. Well, ETBs had never been reprinted, right? Until Hidden Fates. But then people kind of just said, I'm just going to sum up exactly what you said. It had never happened until it did. And then it was unprecedented. And then the next unprecedented thing happened. What I'm hearing frequently, this is definitely not going to be reprinted. It would be unprecedented. That's fine. History might be on your side and that might pan out, but don't risk money you can't afford to lose. Don't risk, and maybe they could reprint. They might be able to reprint 50,000 of these and pump them out there at $120 a piece. Sell me some for 80 or $90 a piece again. Long term, maybe you'd be fine buying them for 200 today, or no, they're like 300 something today, but maybe prices would recover. Maybe they'd go back up and you'd be relatively fine, but just don't take gambles with money you can't afford to lose. Like it all goes back to risk. It all goes back to risk and price point.
Yeah, I mean, when Squeaks came on the channel and we talked about, like, is that a good investment? Like, could be a bad, could be a good investment. Like, I'll be completely honest with you. Like, that's how I view that product. In the short to medium term. At this point, in the beginning, the heat on that product was so crazy.
And all the best thing I can tell you, I got 30 and I have 15 left, and I'm not fire selling them today.
Yeah.
That tells you more. Like I can talk for 20 minutes about UPCs and my thoughts. The most valuable thing I can tell you is exactly what I'm doing with UPCs, I think. And I do. Like that's exactly where I'm at.
You probably feel exactly like me on them.
And my like
your cost basis is super low, so even if they go down, it's a similar reason why when the Evolving Skies went to 180, I didn't feel a need to like liquidate all. Now I don't have that many, but I didn't feel the need to liquidate all of them because I got in 95 and I didn't worry that they were going to go below 95. There's you can get irrational with that sort of stuff. Because it can actually cost you money because it's like, well, I got in so early now, even though now is the right time to sell, I won't. We're humans. We make mistakes. We fall into that sort of stuff. But there's also a system there that is reasonable and rational in that, like, you don't hold the bag to take today's, standpoint. Like we have, I think both Dan and I have mechanisms in ourselves that we're just risk avoidant, and that works for us over time. It with hard work and effort and margin and building margins, and then a few, like, I might be more, because it's funny because Dan has done some things that it seems so out of character to me this year in terms of like buying into pack breaks or MetaZoo or some, deep into some things, or that have been surprising. But like for me, like it might seem out of character, but like I spent $80,000 right before the boom because I just had a really strong conviction. Like I will do things like that, but but I have to be very confident. Like for me to make those moves, I've made those moves like twice in my life on anything. So it's not something that, like, I don't look at all markets and I say, oh, I need to like plow a bunch of money in and I need to like force good things to happen. Like if I don't see anything, I don't force it. So, yeah. So we got super chat here. In terms of collecting and investing, would you rather hold a first edition Chalice Zard PSA 8 or base set Zard PSA 10?
They are both right around $10,000 as of today. I own one of the two. I own the PSA 8 base first Zard. Actually, not PSA, it's a CGC. To me, it's better than the 9 that I sold. So I have a CGC 8 base first Zard. I bought it in a big lot. I probably paid about $8,000 for it if you factor in what I paid for the lot and divide all that out. So I wouldn't touch a PSA 10 Unlimited Charizard. I've owned multiple. I've always sold them. Most of them look like 9s. So yeah, I for that reason,
well, surprising, like, Dan would not go for the 10.
Yeah, like I would take the cleanest 8 I could possibly find that is probably a 9. And someday my CGC 8 Charizard will likely either be a PSA 8 or maybe a PSA 9 if I'm lucky. And that doubles or triples my money. Like I sold a PSA 9 base versus Charizard 2 months ago, I think, for like $25,000 because I had an 8 from CGC that I paid a third of the price. That's cleaner. Objectively, it's a cleaner. And I had a 2 cert 9 that was maybe the whole 2 cert, whatever. And it was an early graded CGC that, yeah, all those things.
I mean, definitely the PSA 8 first edition, and it's not even close.
Yeah.
And I'm honestly really surprised that people are willing to pay so much up for a 10 when there are infinite number of 9s and 8s
and
and infinite numbers of 7s, 6s, 5s, and 4s. And this is a situation where um I just don't know who's buying it. Like I think the vast majority of collectors would say hands down the 8 first edition. Like I don't know who cares so much about 10s that they would rather have that. Like, but now there are people who really care about 10s, but generally those collectors who really care about 10s, they want the PSA 10 first edition Zard. They don't want the PSA Unlimited 10 Zard. You see? Now they might want both, but yeah, it just yeah. Of course, that card makes a lot more sense than your Evolutions PSA 10. That's a whole nother. We don't need to go there, but um,
but that's the kind of thing, like in the hobby, there are so many of those comparisons you can make, and just make the choices that, like, if you see an inefficiency in the market, if you see that something that doesn't make sense, do what makes sense to you and trade up in value constantly.
peak to chew. Jake, what do you like most about Dan? Dan's been a great business partner. He's very honest and smart and reliable. And yeah, it's just been like very, very knowledgeable. For me, trust is like the most important thing, and feeling like someone is is like gonna follow through with like what they say, and then if they're not, they're gonna like acknowledge it, like, and yeah, and so that's what I would say in our partnership, kind of what I, and that's why I like, like I asked Dan to join as I felt like, and I think we have different personalities and different styles and different, areas of sort of expertise. I really knew that Dan, like I'm so heavy into like all of the niches in Pokemon and the numbers. And I knew that Dan was like, although Dan has like a really good grasp of all that stuff, I know that Dan's expertise, we could call it, is in like selling and flipping and reselling and understanding those sorts of things. And he also knows enough about all those other things that he's going to be like able to talk about, a lot of it, and is honest enough to acknowledge when he's like never heard of that card or, doesn't know the numbers on that. So it was sort of that combo is sort of what I was looking for. And can you play basketball, Dan?
I'm 6'4".
Yeah.
I didn't have that height.
That means nothing.
I didn't, I know I didn't have that height back in high school. So like I actually played as like a point guard, shooting guard in high school. And then when I played, I never played for like the team. I
Yeah.
played just like pickup games, intramural games in college. I needed to be like the center. You got to let me do what I like about you though before we go to the next one.
Nope.
I
What
like
would you
Jake.
rather hold? Slap.
I like Jake's knowledge and passion, and I like the value investing, bringing that into Pokemon. Even though I don't like the word investing and all that, but bringing those fundamentals and the fact that he collects these 150-year-old cards and everything in that room there. Like I'm Pokemon 95%. He does everything, and it just blows my mind. Like it's crazy, the drive and the passion for knowledge, learning all that, the aspirations to like have a museum someday. That's all awesome. Like it's not all me. I can't do all that. The same things he touched on. Like I don't know all the little nitty gritty details, the different sets and releases, but the fact that he goes for all that and just loves it, that's awesome. Yeah, you can't skip over that part. You had to let me chime in too.
I think we're a good team.
Yeah.
What would you rather hold, slab bags or modern sealed bags? That's a great question.
I like modern sealed. I like
definitely modern sealed bags. Much rather hold those.
Slab bags are like the top. I've said this before, but PSA 10s are like done. You can't do anything more with them. They're the final product. I want to move that bag to its ultimate bag holder. Whereas the modern sealed bags, theoretically, you can. I'm a gambler. You can gamble. You can open it up. You can turn it into the hit chase card. You can then you can grade it and then sell the slab bag.
Yeah, a lot of it is also like I feel liquidity, price point. Like a lot of these modern slab bags are going to be like $5, and like they're going to actually have zero liquidity. Like you're like they're not going to be $5. They're going to be like $1, but like people are going to be listing them for 5. You know, like like there's potential for that. Whereas like I'd much rather have bought like a bunch of booster boxes at like 80 or 85, and I have to sell them at like 60. Like that's much more pleasant and much easier to just offload. So that's what I would say. Um, and with with like like sealed bags, like just sealed in general. There's the opening experience, right? So like there's when I have a junk slab at the end of the day, this is just a junk slab. Like I can't turn it into anything else. With the sealed, it's an experience. You can at least like open it, enjoy it. You know what I mean? So like it's more likely to hold some value to someone.
Yeah.
I haven't thought about this, to be honest.
Yeah, now you got the, what is it, Hisuian? We got the Hisuian Growlithe and Arcanine for Mason there. He's got, I don't know if he ordered that new plush yet, but
I could see this on like on your more popular Pokemon. That would be my like initial, that it adds some kind of cool flavor, something different.
yeah, like almost like a shiny, but like a different alteration, like the
Yeah.
Alolan Vulpix. It's pretty cool to have the
Maybe
snowy.
it's Delta species ish.
Yeah, yeah, it's, I don't know, desirability years from now. I don't know how that'll all play in. It's crazy to think we're getting Gen 9 this year. Depending on how big Gen 9 is, we may go over 1,000 species of Pokemon. Crazy. I got this. Oh, I'm turning the wrong way. I got the original 151 behind me, and it's crazy to think that we're like headed over 1,000. And then with megas, with the Z forms, and with all the Galarian, Alolan, Hisuian, it's wild. Slab bags.
I like it too. It is fun calling things bags, comparing two different bags.
There's a lot of memes with it, and it's a common one in the Discord.
Um, yes, I am, Max. Oh, we got the bot. The bots are back.
I see that.
Oh yeah. Um. Yeah, definitely interested in the One Piece TCG. I've really been trying to keep an eye on. I think anime and manga and like different. I think that there's potential in card games around those types of things. So, but I think it's all about you know, a lot of it's going to have to do with the distributors they're connected with, you know, the price point, the quality of the card. You know, I was not a big fan of My Hero Academia. I just didn't think it was. I don't even know how that's doing right now. I don't hear anyone ever talk about it. How's My Hero Academia doing? You
I
bought some, didn't you, Dan?
bought a couple cases. I think they're a little over 100 for the first edition. I haven't
That's
sold any yet.
that like about the same price. Is that up?
I bought mine for 90-ish a piece. I think
What's holding?
it
What are
looked.
they sell? Are
It
they
looks like
selling?
they came out with a new set.
Are they selling?
I haven't listed any. I haven't sold any.
Let me see. Let's see if they're selling. I'll look at sold listings. Yes, the unlimited's around like 66. Let's
I see
see.
an auction right now with a bid at 110.
Okay. Oh, I'm seeing some. Yeah. So it appears to be holding. So it could, I don't know if that's speculation or if there's a real player base developing, or I really haven't been following it. I just didn't like it. I looked at the cards. It just didn't do it for me. But if one really does it for me, then I would be, it all starts with collecting for me. So for me, I'm opening a bunch of stuff. I'm not caring about money. That's like MetaZoo for me. I didn't care about the money. I'm just trying to open it, get a sense of it, see if I like it. Um, and I would definitely do it with like animes that I like. So,
S&P 500 is a giant bag.
oh
I
yeah,
think I think Jake has a video with that as the main premise. So
massive bag.
you got to send me a link to that. I want to check that out sometime soon.
Yeah, absolutely. This is 100% right. It's that combo of easier to sell, but I think the main thing, and this is what you hear constantly in those on those channels, is I'll just open it if it goes down, which is like totally reasonable, you know.
Mhm.
Mason going after those bots. The bots versus Mason.
Chat's pretty lively still for after 2 a.m. Eastern
Yeah,
time.
yeah, we're still up over 100.
Yeah.
Whew. All right, what do you think? Is it time?
I'm ready to call it whenever. Yeah. I'm like you said earlier, I'm gonna crawl into bed and my wife's gonna be like, "What is wrong with you?"
All right, guys. Thank you all so much for hanging out. Thank you, Dan, as always.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I think I was a little ranty rambly there for a while. Not really a thought that I've had, a video I want to make and I will make in the future now. I guess you allowed me over 3 hours live on your channel, kind of think and talk through how I want to make my video.
Yeah, I mean, I think yeah, we got in the weeds there for
Yeah.
sure, and I confused some things. I'm sure in my head, I was having trouble articulating some things, and but it's fun. I mean, it's part of being live. Sometimes you don't know exactly. You're sort of articulating thoughts on the fly, and it doesn't always come. So
Yeah, I think we had a half an hour there that we were
yeah,
talking different conversations, but I had fun. I think chat was pretty lively. It seems like people enjoyed it. I think hopefully some good clips came out of this. I saw people talking about clipping different sections. The clips are always fun to reflect on.
all right, guys. Well, everyone have a good night. Go subscribe to Dan, my channel, like the video, all that good stuff. You can follow us. Click the links below. Patreon. We're gonna be doing our monthly thing. Yeah, you put it in the thing, right? I have to do it in Discord now, correct? Or Patreon now.
Yeah,
What is it? What's the date we're doing it?
the final Sunday, the 29th at 9 p.m. Eastern.
29th at 9 p.m. So we're sorry,
It
Max.
is Memorial Day weekend, but sometimes holidays are worse for some people, but then they're better for others. So it is what it is. I guess
We're
it's
we're
not like a
sorry to our European friends once again doing a late time. Next month we're going to do an earlier time. We promise.
Mason called for bags in the chat as we end the stream here. Bags in
Get
the
those
chat.
bags. We're all holding the bag. Everyone's got to hold the bag at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Collectors are going to hold the ultimate bag. That's what someone that was kind of the argument we were having in Discord today. But yeah, I guess that's it. So everyone have a good night or a good day for Trainer Max.
Yo.
We'll
Yeah.
talk to you all. We'll talk to you all
Thanks
next time.
everyone. Thanks, Jake.
All right, guys.